Welcome back to Paranormal the New Normal. This week, I am joined by AJ from Coventry Circle Paranormal Group. AJ, how you doing today?
Doing great, my friend. How's everything going over there?
Oh, it's going. And listeners, you might be interested to hear this. We're going to be having double episodes some weeks in the future because I
Oh,
found
awesome.
I found some guests that just have certain professions that I can't wait to release. So
I'm pumped. That's awesome.
let's just say it's related to SEX and it's related to Ghost. So I
Hey,
I don't know
stuff.
I don't know what the episode's going to be like, but it will be released um a week from this Wednesday on Hump Day, ironically enough.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Work.
So but yeah, this one just fell in my lap, literally. So I just don't know. I got to work with it. But AJ, why don't you tell the listeners what you guys at Coventry Circle Paranormal do?
Yeah, no problem. Basically, tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Connecticut in the USA. And basically, I started Coventry Circle Paranormal after I had a near-death experience. I ended up dying 12 times. The last time that I ended up having a near-death experience, I actually left my body. Was suffering from an addiction. I got addicted to painkillers when I was 18, 19 years old when I fractured a vertebrae in my back. And back then, the doctors didn't really give you any help. They just kind of shoved you on your way. And after prescribing you all these nasty things, and it led me down a wrong path, which ended up leading me down into this paranormal journey, which is now a blessing the way that I look at it. But I started off like every other paranormal investigator doing regular, residential cases, haunted locations, stuff like that. And then I recently switched to just focusing on spirit communication because it's just it started to fascinate me. Some of the responses we were getting through the spirit box. I still do private residential cases. I still do regular investigations, but I try to help a lot of people around the world now. Just connect with loved ones. We've had great success the past year and a half doing it. So it's been a good time, but yeah, basically just focus on the spirit communication aspect using spirit boxes, digital recorders, EVPs, stuff like that, and all the other good stuff as well. So
Well, first off, Connecticut, we're neighbors. I'm from
oh,
I'm in Gardner, Massachusetts.
oh, good stuff, man. We got to get out and investigate together.
Well, funny enough, you say that. My guest last week, Christina Westervelt from East Coast Paranormal and
Yep,
Get Haunted Network, she's
yep.
coming to Gardner in July to investigate a mansion that is.
Oh,
I heard when I moved into Gardner that this mansion is severely haunted. That firefighters won't go in there by themselves, cops won't go in there by themselves because of
awesome.
all the crazy shit that happens in it. So I
Oh,
might
that's gonna,
I might be buying a ticket to go there with her, and I might actually have a couple of people have been in the show before to try to get them to come too because I know one of my guests is originally from here. His parents still live in this area, so maybe I
oh,
get
cool.
so the more the merrier, and it could always be a huge paranormal the new normal event where I have a bunch of my performer guests investigating.
I think that would be awesome, man. And I tell you what, East Coast Paranormal, great team, great team.
Yeah, they seem like a good bunch.
Yeah.
I interviewed Christina last week. Her episode just dropped on, well, 2 days ago now, but by the time this episode drops, it'll be the previous week. But it, and I want to talk to the guy she works with. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I think it's Rob or Ron or something. But I want
Don't feel bad. Terrible with names, man. Terrible with names.
I have been podcasting literally every night for the last like week, and I this week's to be the same thing. So I've talked to
Yeah,
so many different people. It's not even funny, but
right. It
just
just all blends in.
and I mean, yeah, it just does. But I want to talk to him too because he has interesting stories as well.
Absolutely.
But speaking of interesting stories, let's get into some of your stories about things that have happened to your group or just to you while investigating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, start off when I was younger, I didn't know that I kind of had the ability to see, hear, and feel spirits. It didn't really dawn on me until I started working with a medium a few years back, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But when I was younger, I remember being over my aunt's boyfriend's house with her, and it was a really Italian family, and they owned a pizza place, and so it was really all about pizza in that house and just about their restaurant. And I remember having a little boy and a girl in a pink dress. come and like always ask me to play hide and go seek. So like as I'd be climbing into a cupboard or as I'd be climbing into, like some weird spot, this grown up would come in and see me and be like, "What are you doing?" and pick me up out of it. And I'd be like, "Oh, I would tell my uncle, my aunt's boyfriend, "Oh, it's they, your niece and nephew are here." And he would look at me and be like, "I don't have a niece or nephew." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And every time I went to go like say they're right here, they would be gone. And just as a kid, I didn't dawn on it. And when we were leaving his house that one time, I remember seeing them outside playing with like a hula hoop with some like bubbles and stuff like that, running around. And I'm like, "Look, there's your niece and nephew right there." And my aunt and him looked, and they obviously didn't see what I saw. And it never really dawned on me as a kid. So I got older, and I ended up going to a Christian church, gave my life to Christ when I was 16. And it was a weird experience. Once I gave my life to Christ, I started having crazy paranormal experiences, which didn't really make sense to me. I would see these, I guess people would call them demons, these like little creature things that were like 4 feet high, run really quickly. And I remember being at a track one night with one of the people from my church, this girl, Melissa, and I stopped running on the track. And she goes, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "You don't see that thing right there on the fence, trying to get through the fence?" And she knew that according to her, it was a demon and stuff, but she just like shrugged it off. I was like, come on, let's just keep running. And it was the weirdest thing. I just could not understand what was going on. And it wasn't until later when I, had my near death experience and I came back, that all these abilities started to heighten, and things just started to go haywire in my grandmother's house where I was living at the time. My grandfather had recently passed, and just by mentioning his name, pictures would fly off the wall. It got to the point where we had full tomato cans on its side, like sideways like this, and instead of rolling this way, it would shoot across the room and dent walls. And it would be pretty serious. My whole family witnessed it. We would hear knocking on the door when we sat down for dinner on Sundays. The entire family would hear this. And we would also hear a woman singing to my little nieces in the hallway. And as children, they would be running around laughing like somebody was chasing them. And we would deliberately hear this woman's voice. And everyone would look around and be like, "Who's here?" And me and my grandmother would look at each other like, "No one's here." And then it got to the point where I had my girlfriend at the time sleeping, like living with me at the house. And out of nowhere one night, I got woken up. It was the night that my grandmother was going to put her chihuahua down due to diabetes he had, and she just couldn't afford it anymore. And that night, I woke up out of a sound sleep to a female saying to me, "Chico," which was the dog's name, "can't breathe. You got to let Chico out." So all of a sudden I felt these footprints walking from the head of from where my head was on the bed all the way down, jumping off the bed. And I opened my eye, and I happened to see a girl with a ponytail, white shirt, open the door, shut it behind her. She left. So I thought it was my girlfriend. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to piss her off. I'm going to roll into her spot. So when she comes back, she's going to go to lay down, and I'm going to be there, and she's going to be so mad." Right. Well, I rolled over into her spot, and she was still there sleeping. And I woke her up because I rolled right into her. And I'm like, "Wait, that wasn't you that just got up?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And it got so severe, it started to affect her so bad, that we got pregnant together. And she ended up having a miscarriage. And the night before she had the miscarriage, I wasn't sleeping that well, just because of all the activity that was going on in the house. You could just feel the energy. It was really, really weird in the house. And that night I had dozed off for maybe 40 minutes, maybe. And I always sleep with my TV on. I always have my door locked and shut. Well, this night the door was unlocked and open. This TV was completely shut off. And I saw someone next to my head when I woke up, rocking back and forth. So I jumped out of bed. I turned the light on, and my ex-girlfriend was Indian style on the bed, eyes up at the ceiling, rocking back and forth, eyes in the back of the head, speaking tongues or some language. I have no idea what she was speaking. And let me tell you something. It was honestly the scariest thing, one of the scariest things I've ever seen doing this work, or being in this field. And I had to get her immediately out of the house. And the next night before I got her out of the house, I woke up. I ended up passing out again. I woke up, and this time my door was still locked and shut, but my TV was stuck on a blue screen, and no words, no nothing, just complete blue screen. And I woke up to this girl standing at the edge, like the foot of my bed, fully solid. But the energy, the static electricity in the room was so high that you could feel your hairs on the toes, on your toes, all the way up to your head, standing up. And this girl was solid. When I mean solid, dude, like you couldn't see through her. She was me and you. Okay. And
like a straight Ghostbusters ballroom ghost type thing.
dude, I mean, it was like seeing a person in your room solidly, like not a ghost, you know. And I didn't know what was going on because I woke up terrified seeing this person at the foot of my bed. And she had long black hair in front of her face. She had like a white gown that was like soaking wet. And we had a well in our backyard, and it was covered in with dirt. And my grandmother used to always say, yeah, something tragic happened there. And it was just weird that she happened to be soaking wet. But I felt this hatred coming off her, this anger, this negativity. And it wasn't focused towards me. It was actually focused towards my ex-girlfriend at the time, who was laying next to me. And I went to go grab my camera. And as I went to go grab my camera that I started to keep like right on the edge of the top of the bed, I grabbed it, I turned around, I went to go snap a picture. And before I could snap a picture, it was like a pile of leaves being taken by the wind. And she literally evaporated in the room. Now, honestly, I'm freaking out. You know what I mean? And I go and tell like my family, and my grandmother was living with me, my cousin was living with me. And, it sounds stupid. It sounds completely crazy. And I'm like, this is nuts. I've never seen an apparition before. This is crazy, right? Well, 2 weeks later, in front of my whole entire family at Sunday dinner, this same female apparition appeared in our dining room within seconds, completely solid. Only this time her hair was done nice. She was in a Victorian white dress that wasn't soaking wet. She was literally completely solid, but as quick as she came, again, it was pile of leaves being taken by the wind, and she evaporated again. And my family, who was over, like my whole family was over, was so terrified that some of them just left. Some of them didn't speak the rest of the night. And it was hard to get people to speak about it before their passing. And it was one of the most profound experiences that completely changed my life. And I was a complete skeptic. I was one of those cynical skeptics that I like stopped believing in God. I was mad because my grandfather passed away. And I just didn't really believe in all that. Well, this whole experience changed my life. And from there on, I've never obviously seen an apparition like that since. I mean, I've seen apparitions, but not like that solidly and that clear as if me and you were talking. And, that's just what took me on my journey, man. And I mean, I've had so many experiences, positive and negative. One of the positive experiences that I had is my great aunt.
I'm actually gonna stop you. I'm gonna stop you right there for a minute so we can kind of go through
Yeah.
the stuff you just went through. Because
Oh,
that is
sorry.
that
My apology.
it's all good. It's all good. But that is just a lot to digest.
I know. I got so much, dude, that I've been through. So
all right, I'm just gonna try to start at the beginning, and I may forget things as we go through, but I'm gonna try.
I'll help you.
So your grandpa's house, apparently they didn't build it. They bought it from somebody else, I'm assuming.
Yeah. It was built in the 1950s. They bought it, I believe, 20 years later. So like in the 70s, I believe.
So I mean, the whole well thing, I'm kind of guessing I know what happened there in the tragic story. I mean, did you ever look into that?
I did, and I couldn't find any history on this. And the person who owned the house before my grandparents was a radio broadcaster, and I guess he wasn't the nicest of people. So I mean, I don't know if the energy of him had something to do with it. Not too sure, but I couldn't find any history on the land, nothing. I was very upset because there's that house the entire time. I mean, just the communication was off the chain. It really was. I mean, I've found yet to find a place just like that.
I'm sure that's one hell of a house, literally. But
Oh, it was.
So what? So I mean, I'm assuming that either the girl fell in the well and just drowned, or she popped, or it could have been some foul play too. I mean, I don't want to go negative with it, but who knows what could have happened.
Yeah. Well, the weird part is, right, it was built in the 1950s, but she was wearing an older style dress, not from the 50s. It was like 1800s, if not earlier. And that's the part that I didn't quite understand because, I mean, the house was built, they had the well. I mean, could it have been built before? Of course. I mean, that
That's
well could have been.
that's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, it's Connecticut. This is all in Connecticut, right?
Yes, yes. This was actually in North Haven, Connecticut, this house.
So, I mean, Connecticut has a long storied history of
Oh
settlement
yeah.
since like the 1500s, for God's sake. So, I mean, it
All
easily,
of, all of New England has a
oh yeah,
serious.
yeah. I mean, up until like halfway through Maine, then that didn't get settled till later because it was pure wilderness with wolves and everything else. But I mean, so they could have easily built this house. There could have been a house there 100, 200 years before, who knows? And
Oh yeah.
it could have got destroyed during a war, or it could have burnt to the ground at some point. Like, who knows? Like, it could have been a lot of different things that happened to it.
Yeah.
I mean, and
It still puzzles me to this day. It
did you
really does.
did your grandparents know how old the well was? Did they ever have it looked at?
No, my grandparents didn't care about that stuff. They just covered. I mean, I don't know if they covered over, if it was covered over right before they came, but they always just, the only thing they ever told us was when we were little kids, they were like, don't run on that circle of dirt. That's the well. And, we don't know if it's safe. You might fall in, blah, blah. So we were always told to avoid this well area. And it was like almost right up against the house too, which was really weird. It was in the weirdest spot, like in the backyard.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense because I have a well in my house, and it's literally right in front of the living room and garage area. Like, it's right in front of
Oh,
there
okay.
because
Yes. Yeah.
it's
Oh,
it's easier to put in the piping and everything that's closer to the house.
oh, okay. Yeah. That makes
Because
sense.
otherwise, you got to dig up your whole yard to run the pipes.
Of course. Yeah. You're right. I didn't even think about that. You're right. You're
But
right.
I mean, that by itself, I mean, and I do want to say, I meant to say this earlier before you start telling your experience, but I I mean, the whole pill addiction thing is a very commonplace thing in America nowadays, and it's a sad thing because America is finally starting to realize what it really is, and they're finally starting to like try to do something about it, but it's going to
Yeah.
be years before America ever finds a way to truly change the healthcare system to help people like that.
Yeah.
So,
It's stigma too that's around addiction. You know what I mean? Like everybody who's addicted is normally looked at as a scumbag or a junkie or a loser. And, that was very hard too. I mean, just even dealing with family that's still around now, it's like, they obviously still look at you like, oh, I'm not that person anymore. It's been a while, but still it's like, you always be that person. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. I mean, my cousin had the same problem for a good decade, like
yeah.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. And he, like, anything that went missing in the house, always the blame was put on him in a second without anybody. If my grandma's pills went missing when he was in New York, it just was always put on him, like, oh, he took them, but they're just muscle relaxers. Why would he take them? Like, that's not anything useful. Like, that's
Yeah.
just muscle relaxers. But I I mean, it's just, I understand, I sympathize, and I understand what the stigma of it is. And I just want to put that out there for you and for all the listeners. So just
I
as
appreciate.
I didn't want it to seem like I was brushing over that whole part and just like
Oh no,
acting like it didn't
no,
happen.
no, not at all. Like I said, like I told you before, when we first started talking, I'm an open book, man. Like I don't try to hide anything from anybody. I've lived a crazy life. My family is just wild. And I just wanted to be open and tell everybody what I've experienced in my story. And I think there's some important parts that don't have to do with paranormal that have led up to this journey. So
Well, it's funny, well, you said you died 12 times.
yes, OD'd 12 times. My heart stopped.
Was that
It was.
was that in one night, or was that over time?
Oh no, this was over time. But the
Okay.
last two times that it happened the last time that I left my body, that was in the same month.
Yeah.
I was a stupid person, man. Well, I shouldn't say I was a stupid person. The addiction took me over to the point where I would wake up in the hospital after ODing, and people don't understand when you OD, it's just like going to sleep. So when the addict wakes up, they're going to be violent, they're going to be upset, they're going to be pissed, and they're like, why did you bring me here? So what I would do is I'd be an idiot, my whole family's upset standing around me, I'd be ripping the stuff off my arms, I'd leave, and then I'd go out and get high the same exact amount that I that bed, thinking that it was going to make a difference. And I'm lucky to be here, man. I lost 26 friends. I lost a lot of people that I care about. And it's sad. In my town, it was, going to a methadone clinic was like a high school reunion.
Basically,
And
yeah.
yeah,
I,
and
I
it's sad.
I mean, it's a vicious cycle. I mean, it just is. Like it's to get to break out of it is such a tremendous thing to do, and the fact that you can do that just shows you have the strength to get through it. But
Thanks, man.
it's funny that you mentioned like the after death experience, like making it all get heightened because
Yeah.
on my third episode, I interviewed an author who wrote a book kind of based in the same premise,
Yeah.
except the main character went to solve crimes with the help of his ghost buddies
Mm.
and to help in a war of demons versus angels. But it's a
Okay.
very it's a very interesting book by a woman named Brandy Alexander. It's called Genesis: A Paranormal Alliance Destined to Fight Darkness.
Oh, I'm
And
gonna have to check.
I've read the whole book on my Kindle within a month the month of I want to say April, and
Uh,
it is a tremendously. I mean, it's not a long book. It's like a I want to say young adult book almost, but not quite. But I
yeah.
mean, it's just an amazing book, and your experience kind of reminded me of it a little bit.
Awesome.
Shout out to you, Brandy, because I can't wait till your second book's ready to come out and I can get you back on here. But
Amen.
yeah, I mean, and let's see, I'm gonna jump a little forward then, because I mean, the hide and seek thing. You're not the first person I've heard say that about like kids, spirits of kids want to play hide and seek. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me of the Sixth Sense in a way, a little bit, and it also kind of reminds me of The Shining with the two girls. But I
You
mean,
know, so wild because like, it's like when we see kids, like even when parents film, put them on YouTube now and they're saying, who's that? Or they're waving to somebody and the family's like, stop, you're creeping me out. It's to them, like, just like how it was to me, like these spirits don't look like spirits. They look human to children. You know what I mean? Like they look just like us. They can't tell the difference. I mean, that's just what it was for this little girl and little boy. Down the road, when I started working with a medium, she connected with a spirit guide that I have named David. He was an 8-year-old boy. And the funny part about it was the kid that I used to play with and this girl, the boy's name was David. And the funny part about that is that this entire time I was playing with a spirit guide that was in my life when I was a little kid, and he still comes through to this day from spirit communication sessions, and it's cool to hear his voice, like a child voice, and hear him come through. But it's just so weird how everything is connected. These similarities all over, the synchronicities, and that's the biggest part of the paranormal for me.
I love that word. I was just gonna say synchronicities because I'm a huge Monsters Among Us podcast fan, and
Awesome.
Derek Hayes loves the word synchronicities, and he got me into using it. And I even had an episode with podcaster named Glenn Ralph about the synchronicities in his life, all around his spirits too as well. But
Yep.
I mean, it's just trippy. But yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
they say that children are a lot more sensitive to seeing spirits and whatnot
Yeah.
than humans are. I mean, then not humans, than adults are for sure. And I mean, the fact that you had near death experiences though might have like pushed your sensitivity past like backwards to that point a little bit. Like maybe that's what it was because you got so close to the beyond or afterlife or whatever you want to call it that
Yeah.
maybe that's what's happened.
Well, I tell you, it's wild. I mean, I'll tell you what happened when I left my body. When I left my body, the paramedics were already there, and they were, I guess, giving me CPR from what I could see. And the weirdest part was I was standing above, and I could see my body. I could see the paramedics working on me, but at the same time that I was above, looking down at my body, I was also everywhere around these people. I heard every single thing they said. I was on their shoulder, but I was also standing above. It was weird. I had a 360, like multiple simultaneous view of everything. And then I went up this like tube, this dark tube, and I went up. And as I went up, bunch of things that there was like a picture thing that came like through, like I don't know if it was memories or if it was just history. I really don't know what it was because I can't remember what the clips were that I was watching. But then it opened up to this valley, and this place that I went to, it resembled Earth in a way, but the colors and the things that were there are, we can never get to the colors. Let's put it that way. Just the color of this place, certain flowers, just everything about it is like it's like colors we don't even have here. And then I was approached by a giant white light that I knew it was talking to me telepathically, that I just knew in my soul that was God for some reason. I don't know why. And then he just said, it's not your time. You need to go back. And then once he said that, before I can get a word out, I was sucked back down the tube. And next minute I know, I got shocked by a paddle from the paramedics, and I literally sat up and I jumped up and I was looking around. Where is he? Where is he? I'm not ready. Like talking to myself, and these guys were like, "Yeah, just calm down, calm down," And it freaked me out. It freaked me out because it was so real, man. It was so real.
See, as an agnostic,
Yeah,
I mean, that's something I always kind of wanted to see, just so because my family, I was brought up Christian too, and I mean, I was
yeah,
always I'm Italian as well, so I was always told like I went to church until I was 18. I got my confirmation, and then
yeah,
I went to church every so often for years after when I could with work and everything, and
yeah,
I just turned in like eventually just like I saw no proof, I saw no signs, so
yeah,
I started losing faith and I went atheist for a long, long time. And
yeah,
then I started getting into mythology, and that's what made me agnostic. Is I'm like, I read Neil Gaiman's American Gods, and
yeah,
that's what made me start thinking, what if all the gods of old are still out there, and they're just normal people now, and they just are there those people who don't die? They're those people who are just around forever until you forget they exist, and then the next
yeah,
generation will meet them eventually. I mean, who knows? But
yeah.
it's a wormhole that if we go down, we'll never get out of. But
Oh, I know, I know. It's so funny because doing this work, you think that you would get answers, but just like what you just said, we could go down a wormhole because it's like the more answers I get, the more questions I have.
mhm,
So wild. It's like it's an addiction in itself, to be honest. This
oh,
paranormal
it is. I
thing.
mean, and it's
So
100% addiction. Paranormal. I mean, I've been into the paranormal since I was in elementary school, so it's definitely an addiction.
yeah.
It's a good addiction compared to others,
Oh
but
yeah. Oh
it's a.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. So I choose that over any other addiction, but
I mean,
it's just
but
funny, fascinating to the point where you just want more and more and more.
yeah, I mean, but let's go. I want to go back for a second to the where you saw the creature in the driveway that
Yeah, yeah.
you call the demon, but
Back
have you ever
driveways.
have you ever possibly considered just consider the possibility of it being something more fairy realm related, or like little person, like a gnome or a gremlin, or just anything that all these or like a puckwudgie, even because you're in Connecticut, it could have easily been a puckwudgie.
Yeah, it could be an elemental, it could be any of that. You're absolutely right. It was weird because it was like a knowing. It wasn't like I saw it, I just immediately thought, oh, demon, you know what I mean? But the thing is, like, for some reason, I felt the hatred, I felt the anger, I felt the negativity. All I knew was that it was a negative being, but something in my soul was just like, that's a demon. Like the way that it looked, it was very short, had like a dog face, but at the same time, it was like a horse type nose where it was elongated like this, like a dog and a horse, and it was short on like a werewolf looking body. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and it doesn't make any sense. Like it was clear as day too, which scared me. But it sucks because when I see these things, it's hard to be like related to someone else who can't see these things because it's like I look crazy, I look stupid. You know what I mean? So
Of
when I
course,
was felt crazy, you know what I mean? And plus, at this time when I saw it, I was not a believer. I was not into God, man. I was not into any of this. I mean, I was going to the church, but most of the time I was going to church because I was in love with the girl that brought me, you know what I mean? And I wasn't really focused on God, but then all these experiences happened and it changed my perception. But after doing this work for almost 10 years now, my faith has changed. Let's put it that way. I have faith, but my faith has changed dramatically from what I've learned. So
yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing with religion. I mean, my
yeah,
theory is if there is something out there, you will not know what it is until it's your time to know what it is. It's just
yeah,
it's like working for the FBI or CIA, and you're only told things when you're supposed to know them, and
yeah,
that's just the best way I can compare it, because it's. I mean, I don't want to say I do believe there's a one singular God, because in this universe, there's never a singular of anything, any creature. Same as there can't be just one Bigfoot, there has to be multiple. There can't
mm,
be just a Loch Ness monster. There's got to be a family of them if they've been seen for this long. But I
yeah.
mean, those are all other rabbit holes we might go down later. But
Well,
I,
it's funny you say that because I've asked spirits about this, and obviously we can't tell if they're telling the truth. We can't tell if it's 100% truthful or not. I mean, that's the whole point of dealing with this consciousness that we call spirit. But they said that God isn't a God that's like how we think of him, like, oh, a man sitting on a cloud or a man up in heaven or anything like that. The way that they described it to me is that think of a pool of water, right? But consider the water energy, and consider you flip that thing upside down and little droplets started coming out of the pool. And the spirit said basically like God is the full consciousness of that water. And he makes you as an extension of that consciousness, and your consciousness is made off of that, which then experiences the, thing that we are now, this shell and body. And when it was told to me by them, I was like, wow, through the spirit box, by the way. And I was a little like, wow, that actually kind of does make a little sense. And the way they've been describing it to me is in energy, frequency, and vibration. Just like how Nikola Tesla always talked about it. And that's why I've been super obsessed with Nikola Tesla forever. And because
Tesla is a very interesting topic. I mean, he's that man is. I've listened to multiple podcasts about him, and he's just a very interesting person. And it makes you wonder what he really knew or found out that they made him disappear the way they did.
Dude, if he lived and made that spirit phone that he was him, and then Edison was going to do as well, then Edison died before he could do it. I couldn't imagine the technology we would have for paranormal communication right now, because that man was just a genius. I mean, if there was anyone I can go back and talk to for a minute, it would be him.
100%. Yeah, but I do like, so just so you know, listeners, it was just confirmed here. God is not Morgan Freeman. it was just, he's not a muscular white man with his long white beard and a cloak. That's not God. But it does make me think of when Bender meets God on Futurama and he's just a cloud in space. That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is that it made sense when they said this to me years later after my near-death experience, because during my near-death experience, like I said, I was approached by a white light, like brighter than bright. You couldn't look into it, but you felt love off of it, but it was telepathically talking to you. And it made sense after they said this to me, because I'm like, we are energy down to the cellular level. Science knows that. And science also knows that energy does not die. So when they said that to me, like, you have to look at God as the consciousness energy of all of us. And we are the extension of that consciousness energy that gets brought forth into this. So when religion and all this spiritual stuff talks about how God is always with you, it makes sense to me now because of the fact that we are an extension of him. So the same consciousness energy that's running through our bodies is the same consciousness energy that made worlds, like made the universe, made stuff like that. So and technically he's living through our perception, different lives through each and every one of us, which is growing the consciousness knowledge infinitely, making him all knowing, or making it all knowing, because it's experiencing everything simultaneously all at once, which is pretty bizarre to hear, when I think about all that. But it's just something that they told me. Like I said, don't know if it's 100%. I can only go by my experiences, but I thought it was fascinating, and I figured I'd share.
Oh, that's honestly amazing, because, well, for one, I had a guest 2 weeks ago who has seen the devil 3 times.
Yeah, I've actually experienced, what I would call the devil as well a couple of times. So I could agree with that. But please tell me what you heard.
Well, I mean, I don't want to give away all away, but basically, he has seen the devil 3 times in his life. Once he believes in Bolivia when he was in the army, and in a place called El Canyon de Tio, Uncle's Canyon. It basically is this canyon in Bolivia where there's a giant 50-foot tall devil painted on the side of the canyon entrance, and there's white crosses all along the top of the canyon for all the people that died there. And there's him and his buddies were driving down through the canyon, and there was they saw all these white crosses, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, and they have guards stationed at each side of the canyon, because at nighttime they do not let people go in there, because anyone who goes in there at night dies.
Wow.
And I'm not going to give away the ending, but let's just say he saw an animal-like thing walking around when him and his friends went in there at night.
Wow.
And he also has been at a crossroads, and he was helping the cops investigate a satanic ritual looking scene at a house in New Orleans, when he was in
Oh,
his 20s or 30s. So because they knew he knew about satanic like rituals to some degree, and that like he studied different symbols and all that. So he
yeah.
and that all three of those stories are it's slowly becoming it's my second highest listened to episode yet, I believe. And
Oh, that's
my pilot's the only one that beats it, and that's because it was someone from another podcast I do that she's a guest on that sometimes, and she got a lot of listeners because of that. But
uh,
so yeah, I mean I'm trying to think because that little creature you saw, I'm still stuck on that because it reminds me of the little creatures that run around in Maleficent in the like the fairy realm.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's so hard. It's so hard, man, because it's funny because I saw them for a very very long time after going to that church and giving my life to Christ and stuff, and I saw him for a very long time. And then before my ex girlfriend, kind of had that possession about where I was telling you about. Um, I the door would open when we were in the room, and I would have the door shut, and it would open by itself. You'd hear the click click, and it would swing open a little, and then you would see a gust of wind, and I would see the creature. No, she wouldn't, or nobody else would see it, but the gust of wind would run around my bed really quickly. And when it did, we had a closet that was open of her clothes, and you would see the clothes go by as if someone took their finger as they ran by. And it was crazy because you could actually see the gust of wind running around the bed. It was the weirdest thing. Which I wish that I can, I wish that I can, I wish I could have took a picture or captured something in that moment to, verify and show people. Because when you hear people talk, it's like, oh yeah, 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 he's just, excuse my language, bullshit and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, it's like, I wish I was, because I'm the first person to want to call somebody out if they're faking something or anything like that, because I'm totally against such things. And, I don't really talk about these stories too much unless I'm obviously getting asked by someone on a podcast or something. But I try not to do that. I try to have, solid evidence now where it's like a video, audio, something that they could listen back, hear the experience with me, which unfortunately the paranormal doesn't have a timer. So you don't know when it's going to happen, unfortunately.
Oh God, no. I mean, I
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get people on this show that have seen like cryptids because there's a lot of paranormal investigators out there, obviously, and a lot of them have ghost spirit encounters, but trying to find people that have cryptids. I mean, because the paranormal is unplanned, and
Yeah.
people who see Bigfoot either they have very little to say because it was a glimpse, or they
Yeah.
just don't even want to talk about it because it was that spooky.
Yeah.
And it goes for all cryptids. I mean, my dream is to get the people from the American Dogmen Project on here,
Oh,
because
that.
I mean I don't know if you've seen that website, but it's basically a map. Oh, you have?
Yeah, I actually have, man, because I'm into all that, man. I'm into
Mm.
cryptids, the dog, man. One of the cool ones that I really love is Mothman. That thing is just, it's
Oh,
so, shows up right before a tragedy. Like that's the creepiest thing. You know what I mean?
it is. I mean, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is it angel warning of doom, or is it a demon causing doom?
Exactly.
And it's
You know,
just creepy because I mean, yeah, that's the golden ticket right there that I would love to have
yeah,
as someone who actually had an encounter with Mothman, maybe even someone who was back in the 70s, I want to say, when the original sightings were in
yeah. Was that when the was that the one place you're talking about when the bridge fell? Yes, I know
Point
what you're
Point
talking.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Yeah, Point
I
Pleasant,
could.
West Virginia. Yeah,
Yeah, that was a crazy event.
it was. I mean, well, they made a movie out of it for God's sakes because of
I know.
the investigators' notes they made a movie off of. But
I, I know.
Richard
And
Gere.
yeah, no, Richard Gere is great, man. And you know what's crazy is that I find it so fascinating that people have had these cryptid things, because it always makes me wonder, like, are they seeing an animal that we already know, but it just, or that we don't know, but it's not actually a cryptid that we think, like a dog man or something like that. Like, I just want to have my own experience. So I could be like, no, that was definitely it. You know what I mean? Or have somebody catch really good film to show, if it really is something we haven't, encountered yet.
Well, actually, I'm gonna pinpoint that for later in creature feature because I'll bring up one that we can talk about that exact scenario.
Sounds good.
But and I mean, all right. The last thing I'll go back to before I let you tell some more of your stories is
Yeah.
the full body apparition. I mean, that's when I was growing up watching movies like Ghostbusters and Ghost and all the other movies that show Ghost. Like, not
Yeah.
I didn't see Sixth Sense recently, so I'm not gonna say that, but that's what I always pictured spirits would look like is full body apparitions that you could see clearly, like in Ghostbusters, but
Yep.
or like Slimer. But
Yeah.
but I bought a house back in November in
Mhm.
Gardner, and my first house, and
Mhm.
it is the people who built it, the couple that built it, are still living here.
Wow.
We actually had the Massachusetts Paranormal Investigation Society, or I forget what exactly they're called, but
Yeah.
they came in and they did a whole full scale investigation, and we were in my stepson's bedroom, and
Mm.
just the three of us, lights out and everything. They had the spirit box running, they had the camera running, they had lights going, and
Yep.
like all of a sudden I get the coldest feeling on my back. Like
Mhm.
it felt like someone dropped a bucket of ice water on my back because my hairs all stood up on end. And I told him like my back just got really, really cold. Like I'm trying to whisper because I think, come figure
Yeah.
myself like, oh, the spirits care if you whisper or talk. But I also didn't want my kids to hear and get freaked out by it though. Supposedly they're saying they see something lately, but I don't know. I want to believe them, but
Yeah.
my stepson likes to make up stories a lot, so it's hard to believe them.
I'm tough with kids, you know?
But anyway, they took a picture of me when I said that, and we had the divining rods, and we were asking them questions because they were in the room and they were saying words into the spirit box, and
Absolutely.
like the word jungle came out, and we asked them because my girlfriend then now wife has
Yeah.
chickens, and
Oh,
they asked them, are like, are you referring to the chickens when you say jungle? And they said yes.
wow.
And so I was telling like I was asking the spirits, I'm like, Raleigh, the guy's name was Raleigh Harrington who built this house, and
Mhm.
he's like, I'm like, do you like all the improvements I made on your house since I moved in? And in my right ear, I hear the slightest thank you.
Wow.
And if every single hair on my back wasn't up on end at that point already, I literally almost went full Scooby Doo and like jumped up, running in midair out the room. But
Yeah.
I stayed in for another second. They snapped some pictures, and in one of the pictures they sent me, you can almost see a face between, like my arm was like up like this, and you can see a face between my arm and my stomach.
Oof. You know, that's wild, man. That's absolutely wild. And it's so crazy because I feel like, the closer we get to trying to figure out what the afterlife is or what it's like and stuff like that, like even with all the information that I've gotten from spirit over the years, you just obviously you have to take it with a grain of salt. You can't really take it to heart. I try to line up the synchronicities or similarities, and I try to do that. Just to see the bigger picture because for some reason I've just always felt that that's how spirit works in that way. And it's so tough because you want to know the answers, but then like I said, you're left with just more questions.
Of course, I mean, and this was my only first and only spirit encounter that I fully would register as an encounter because
Yeah.
I mean my wife's old house that she lived in before she moved in with me, it's down the Bridgewater Triangle, and
Hmm.
that house is definitely haunted. It's built on an Indian burial ground and everything else, full poltergeist house. But
um
I mean, I never experienced anything there per se, but if you're in the backyard at night, if you're in the house at night,
hmm.
especially like 1, 2, 3 in the morning, you feel like something's watching you. And
Oh,
I looked out the window once and I could have swore I saw something looking back at me from behind me. But I didn't I just kind of pushed it in my mind like I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I did not see that because her house is creepy enough and I didn't want to be seeing things that would scare me and not make me want to go there anymore because
yeah.
I want to see my girlfriend and I don't want to not spend time with her. So
Yeah. No, I get it, man. I totally get it. See, me would be the complete opposite. I would not be spending time with my girlfriend because I'd be too busy going to investigate the house or try to communicate with the spirit. So either way, we'd both be in the doghouse.
yeah, I mean, well, I'll end it here because for this subject at least, because I would love to get my wife in this show one day, but she's not a
Yeah.
public person and she never will do it. I don't think. I'm gonna have to.
Understand.
I think I'm gonna have to write down all her stories and then just
Yeah,
publish a solo episode of me talking about her stories.
there
But
you go.
this one I actually never brought up in the show before. But the room she was in with her two kids, she and her sister had it before, and she saw the same thing. At night, if you turn off every light in the room and you're laying in bed, you'll see a figure on the ceiling, and it looks like there's three orbs in his hands or its hands, and they're just circling around.
Oh wow.
So maybe it was a Native American sorcerer, kind of, or a Native American medicine man, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call them. I
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
think of the right term right now. I just heard it on a podcast the other day too, but
Well,
uh,
I'm sorry not to interrupt you. What I was going to say about that is, you know what I with my research, one of the things that I've been coming across lately is I've been realizing that, and Spirit has validated this for me, but I'm still trying to figure out more into it. But what I'm going to say is, so this consciousness energy that we know of as spirits, right? The way that they describe to us, to me, I mean, and to my partner, and to the team of people across America that I work with, and across international that I work with, they describe it to us that this consciousness energy that we know of as spirit can manipulate our consciousness to give us a certain experience. And what I mean by that is, say if I was from a different country, and say if I was Muslim, right? Well, they're not going to all of a sudden always have an experience where Jesus Christ shows up, because that's not their religion, right? So the spirit is going to, it's going to work off of their consciousness of what they believe in their beliefs, and it's going to show itself to them, say as Muhammad, peace be to him, but it could show itself as that. And how I've been figuring all this out is through, there was, I don't know if you ever saw this video, but there was I think it was triplets. There was three girls, I believe. And the mother had a baby camera in the room, and they woke up in the middle of the night and they're yelling at this thing on the wall, and they come over, one comes over, tries to jump and slap it, but there's nothing there. You can't see anything, but they keep telling this thing to go. And all of a sudden at one point, they all jump and they run out of the room. They all get scared at the same time. They run out of the room, and they tell their mother, and they went on the news and they tell their mother that they saw a lion, and this lion growled at them and it scared them. And I believe that this consciousness energy is translating itself through our consciousness and our brains and stuff like that. So for these little girls, it's going to show itself in a way that they would know, that they would understand, right? So to them, they know animals because they're little kids. So lion, tiger, stuff like that, it would show itself as. Whereas us, now that we're more adults, however we were brought up, whatever our environment was, whatever, our belief system is, whatever, we are, they have to translate to us so that we would understand, okay, this is actually a paranormal experience. And you'll know this by certain experiences you've had and other people have had from what you've listened to, that no one paranormal experiences is always the same. There is
I know.
similarities, but it's always not the same. And I believe this theory that I've been coming across with this research I've been doing goes to show that this consciousness energy that we know of as spirit is actually trying to work with our consciousness and our physical body and our brain to be translated, just like how mediums, when they get say a message right from the other side, it's a block of energy, a block of thought that goes in, and then they have to interpret what the spirit has sent them in that block of thought. So that's why a lot of mediums have a hard time, say with names all the time, like getting the exact name, because what the spirit may be trying to tell them may not actually be what they're translating it as. And it's just a theory, like all of paranormal is a theory. But from just some of the similarities that I've gotten, synchronicities I've gotten, especially those little girls and other things just like that, it makes you wonder, like this energy that we know of, this conscious energy that we don't fully understand. I believe just like how it can, manifest from a shadow to a clear, see-through apparition, to a lion like these girls, also does the same when it comes to individual people it's connecting with. So, just a theory though.
Yeah, which is kind of mind blowing to me because
Right.
on Monsters Among Us, Derek talks about a theory where alien related, but the same way, kind of, where aliens change themselves to look like something that will comfort us so we
Yeah.
don't freak out. Like there's been stories of the monkey from Dunstan Checks In coming into a kid's room when they were someone's room when they were a child, and
Yeah.
also a T-Rex in a lab coat is another one that came up. So I mean,
Yeah.
what if these things do? What what if I mean, what if aliens and spirits both change their forms to things that will comfort us, so that we are
You're
not
right.
so we're not totally freaked out by what the real I mean what the real form looks like? Because I mean, shadow people, mist looking. I mean, I always thought ghosts were full human apparitions. I never thought there'd be any other type, but
Yeah.
I pondered the theory when we first moved in this house. What if spirits learn as the longer they're spirits, they learn more to change their form. And the mist that you see may just be a new ghost who or new spirit who doesn't really know how to control their powers yet or control
Yeah.
themselves. And
Yeah.
maybe a shadow person is when they first start to get recognition of
Yeah.
what they can do, and maybe that's just the first thing they could do is a shadow, like a shadow figure of a person.
Yeah.
So, I
No,
mean,
you're absolutely. The medium that I work with very closely, she said that her guides that she connects with and gets information from, she said that, shadow people, a lot of paranormal, experts or investigators or whatever, they'll say like, oh, shadow people are evil or shadow people are this or whatever. And she's like, no, it could be the same thing as a regular spirit. The only thing is that that's the way that they're manifesting for you to see them. It's not always like that. It's not always negative. It's not always, positive, and I believe it's, the same thing as a regular mist or whatever, same thing as seeing a regular apparition. It's just all spirit. And whether you're connecting with intelligent positive or intelligent negative is the intent that you're putting into your communication. If you go into it as I want to seek negative, like demons and Satan and everything like that, I believe you're going to get negative energy. I believe it. You know?
yeah, I mean, you get in what you put out. That's 100% true.
Yeah, yeah,
I have to believe that's true. Maybe that's why the spirits I had, because I went into this completely open minded. I wasn't trying to think like, oh, they're going to be trying to scare me out of my house. No, I just thought maybe they just start. I mean, I don't see how they didn't pass in the house, but
yeah,
as I've been told by multiple people on the show, that doesn't make a difference. That
yeah.
their energy will go wherever they are attached to. Doesn't matter if they're physically there or not, they will go there.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be attached either. I mean, it could be, they could just, decide to come there, whether it's, you calling them in through a tent or your energy, or just say it's a loved one. A loved one doesn't have to be in that place all the time, but can come and visit. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I think like from all the experiences that I've had, I go to these locations and I try to help spirits cross over from the knowledge that I've learned from the medium that I work with. And we've had great success with it. But a lot of these spirits that we deal with are it's so like, okay, so consciousness, right? It's like if you're constantly thinking all the time, it's consciousness, right? So the thing is like these spirits, they cross over, say that they're scared or their belief system when they died was, oh, I did something horrible, like people in jail, right? And they get stuck in this location and people just think, oh, it's a negative spirit, it's stuck there. Well, in reality, no, I don't think it's that at all. I think that it actually is, like they're just stuck in the negative like we get when we're in depression. And I believe that they tell themselves so much and then without the light they lose that, that energy, and then they get stuck in this low vibration and they get stuck. And that's why they're always asking people, they go to these haunted locations like help, all this stuff, and then people make them do circus tricks by turn off this light or turn on this light, speak through this device, and then they never help, or they keep poking and prodding them, and the next minute, the spirit, just like a regular human's like, dude, you're pissing me off, leave me alone, and then all of a sudden it leads to a negative encounter. But I don't think that all this stuff is negative. And I don't believe that, I believe that a lot of these spirits that are stuck because of their own way of thinking after they have left this earth, but that's just from my research. Like I said, everybody has a different opinion. So
100%, yeah, 100%. So you said that you had an experience where you might have saw the devil.
yes, I had a couple experiences. So the first one was an actual physical encounter, and I'll explain that a little bit. So um I had an experience when I was younger where my great aunt passed away, and I went in and I heard a voice telling me to go upstairs, pray over her. Long story short, I did. She had 5% brain activity. The next day, she walked out of the hospital 100% after I prayed over her, and nobody knows how. The Yale Hospital doesn't know how. It's a long story, but I'll tell it another different time. But so my grandmother's friend, her niece, had tumors and cancer that was actually growing from the rectum, so she couldn't sit down all the time because she had a massive tumor down there. And basically, she was coming to the end of her life, and my grandma was like, "Oh, my grandson, he prays. You could pray over your niece, if you'd like." And so I spent the whole week fasting and looking at my Bible. This was when I was deep into Christianity at the time, and I wasn't really doing this work yet. And I go over this girl's house, and at the time I believed that Spirit was giving me some scripture, so I told them the scriptures. And when I got there, she had the entire family from Florida there. I mean, there was tons of people, and I'm like, I'm not no healer, you know what I mean? I'm just a regular guy here. And it made me feel really weird because I didn't want to be like, I didn't want it to be something spectacular, right? So we go into the room, and I tell them a couple of scriptures that I felt Spirit was leading me to. And then we go in the room, and I have everyone stand in a circle. We all hold hands, and I lay my hands on the niece, and we start praying. And when we get done praying, there was one guy that showed up, and he was a friend of somebody's there. Nobody knew him. Okay. This guy was this girl just met him like a week ago. She ended up bringing him because he was talking to her about all this, witchcraft and spiritual stuff. Well-dressed man, right? So when I got done praying, he walks over to me and he goes, you did a good job, but, and he grabs the Bible out of my hand and he goes, next time you should do this, and you should talk more about Jesus and this. But yeah, you did a good job, man. But, next time you should really raise their faith more. Immediately, I started doubting myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did I not do something right? Like, he really made me feel like I didn't explain enough or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, my grandmother's friend comes over to me and goes, stay away from him. He's the devil. I don't know why, but he's the devil. Well, I didn't. I ended up taking his number down because he knew I was in sales. He's like, call me, I'll give you a job, right? So I call this number, and it goes to a business, and I get him on the phone, and I talk to him, and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I hang up the phone. I go to call him the next day about, like getting the application and doing the job, right? Well, I call the same number, only this time he doesn't work there. The company doesn't know who he is. And he's just completely disappeared. And the weirdest part about it was my grandmother's friend kept calling my grandmother until this happened and kept saying, tell your grandson, stay away from this man. I don't know what he is. We don't know who he is, but stay away from him because he's the devil. And I don't know why she kept saying that. And out of nowhere, this man just completely vanished. The company that I called, just didn't know him at all. Like, they're like, there's nobody here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just talked to him yesterday. And the lady's like, I'm sorry, but there's nobody here by this name. And I actually went down there, and there was just an empty office that was in the building, but nobody said that anybody worked there. And it was the weirdest thing ever. Right. So then next encounter I had was one night where I had sleep paralysis, and I've never had sleep paralysis since, nor have I had it beforehand. And I woke up because I sleep on my stomach. I woke up and it felt like somebody was sitting on my back, like sleep paralysis, does cause. Well, all of a sudden, this man walked in the room. He was dressed in a suit and tie, and he had a briefcase, and he leaned down, he bent down, like squatted down, and he looked me dead in the face as I couldn't move. And he looks over at this thing that must have been sitting on my back, according to him. And it was some R name that he called this creature on my back. And he said, go back to hell. Anthony's had enough for one night. And he looked me dead in the face and he said, I'll be back for you. And he started laughing. And all of a sudden I literally went to go jolt to get to the door as I was trying to scream for somebody to hear me, anything. And when I fell off the bed, I woke up and I wasn't in sleep paralysis anymore. Well, the next day when I went downstairs, I had two handprints on my back where my lats were. And it looked like if you take a hand on a window that's wet and you streak it down, and how it has those things.
Yeah.
Downstairs in the kitchen, I didn't know. I mean, my back was kind of burning a little, kind of hurt a little, but I didn't pay any attention. I just thought, maybe I pulled something, whatever, right? So I come down in the kitchen, and my family's in the kitchen. And they're like, Anthony, what happened to your back? And I'm like, what are you doing? And they took a picture, and I saw it, and it was literally two hands. If someone was pressing into my skin and then dragged downwards on a wet window. It was the weirdest thing. But I've had one more experience with the same suit and tie person. And the funny part is the way that I describe this devil or whatever you want to call it, he literally was dressed that way when I saw him at this guy who I saw was dressed exactly the same way. The face was different. The guy was the same way. The third encounter I had a visitation from my great uncle when he passed. And I was in this dream, and all of a sudden I had that same person, the suit and tie and the suitcase in front of me, telling I'm worthless, that I'm I'm all these things with the addiction I was going through. I was a piece of crap and all this stuff. And all of a sudden I remember just bawling my eyes out. And then I saw my uncle sitting behind him, like a big white light around him, sitting on a couch. And I just went and I gave him the finger. And then all of a sudden he disappeared. And the thing he said before he left was, "I'll never let you go and I'll see you again." And as he was laughing, he disappeared. I've never seen this entity again. But then again, like I said, I don't know if it was obviously the devil, but I could tell you that it was a knowing inside that made me feel that it was. Like I said, it could just be consciousness, my consciousness, having a wild thing or a daydream or whatever you want to call it. But when I had that guy solidly in front of me do what he did and just completely vanished from the whole company and everything, and then vanished from the girl that he knew. The girl never saw him again, couldn't get in touch with him. I mean, this man vanished off the planet Earth. And it was a very weird thing to have my grandmother's 80-year-old friend come up to me and say, "He's the devil, stay away from him," out of nowhere. And she doesn't even know this man. She's like, "I don't know why I'm saying this, but I just feel he's the devil." And then him just completely disappear. I mean, could it be a coincidence? Absolutely. But it was a very, very pronounced thing, or, very big thing. And what ended up happening afterwards is that I doubted myself. I didn't think I can go back and pray over this lady. I had my friend who's a pastor come, and sadly she got better for a little bit, and then she passed away. And I always felt that blood was on my hands because I doubted myself. And it bothered me for a very long time. But she was a good lady, and I know that she's up wherever we call heaven.
Yeah, which a lot to unpack here once again. The devil, I mean, they always say the devil will be dressed in fine clothes because
Yeah.
he wouldn't show himself in just a cloak or just in a loincloth anymore, because that's just not the time we live in. And he would always keep, if he does exist, he would always keep appearances when he sees people.
Exactly.
And I've heard stories like this before, where like someone tries to get involved in someone's life and then that person just disappears and not a trace of them. Which,
yeah, I've never had it happen besides this one incident. And it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, you have to be there to truly fully understand like what it was like in that moment. Telling the story really doesn't do it justice. But there was just so much similarities and things lining up. It was the creepiest thing that I could have ever experienced in that time.
yeah, I mean, that would definitely, that's another thing. I mean, I would take that as proof even too if that happened to me, because I would just be full. I mean, humans are gonna know the devil or something demonic when they see it, because we have a natural built-in fear of it all. We have in our if you want to call them souls, if you want to call them in our spirits, we have a natural fear of these creatures because it's been put into us for thousands of years.
Exactly.
Since the beginning of time. I mean, the devil's been around since man first supposedly came out of Eden, but that's what you believe. But
what's funny that you're agnostic and you say that, because it's funny is that the way the spirits actually told me, because I asked about demons and I asked about the devil and stuff like that, and they basically said there isn't a force that's trying to bring you down, but they said over thousands of years from the church, from religion, putting this negative being over you and saying demons and saying stuff for thousands of years, our consciousness has actually manifested these creatures and has created what we would call demons. And I asked what demons were, according to these spirits. And like I said, this could be total hogwash. But they said to me that they are thought forms that are very powerful, that are created off of negative emotion and trauma that a human being has experienced. And they always talk about how our thoughts are more powerful than we can even imagine. And quantum mechanics actually states positive, positive, negative, negative tracks. So,
100%. I mean,
yeah.
basically what you're talking about basically is a tulpa, like a real tulpa
Yeah.
that humans can breathe into existence, which
Mhm.
I mean, we only know what the brain could do to some level, like 25%. We know what 25% of the brain could do, if that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to telepaths,
Yeah.
telekinetic abilities, and sensitive to spirits and all this stuff, it's just who knows? I mean, there's so many possibilities out there.
Yeah.
But I see, I'm agnostic, and I,
Yeah.
but I truly believe there have to be beings in the underworld and beings in the heavens, for lack of a better word, because
Yeah.
since the beginning of time, with Norse, with Greek,
Yeah.
with Roman, there always has been below and above. There always has been the two
Yeah.
dividing factors. And but in the ancient mythologies, the ones in the underworld were just there for you when you died, if you deserve to go there, if you
Mhm.
didn't die in battle, or if you died from being a bad person, basically.
Yeah.
And they didn't come to get you normally, though. No one saw Hela, no one saw Hades, like no one saw them. You only saw them if you wanted to see them, and if
Yeah.
you wanted to strike a deal with them for something, as many of the myths tell us. But
Yeah.
no, there's no stories of them just appearing to people and saying, "Oh, you're mine." You don't know it yet, but you're mine. Which this is a very similar story to the one I had a couple weeks ago. No, similar, but not nowhere near the same. Nowhere near the same, 100%. But it's just, I mean, if we create this type of a devil into existence,
Yeah.
then he's going to show up to people and say, "You're mine," because that's what we created him to do.
Yeah.
That's what the church made us do, because it says in the Bible,
Yeah.
Satan tries to trick people and to force people to do things for him, so they'll end up in his realm. I mean, the famous
But you know
blue.
what's funny though, thousands of years ago, the church was basically like a government itself. So what was the way for them to make the most money and make sure that their parishioners, or whatever those what that word is, patrons, uh will keep tithing and keep coming to their church and not turn away from the faith? And the way to do that is to put them in fear.
Yep.
And that's a lot of these ancient, these thousands of years ago, this church and religion has done over the years, is put this construct over people that if turn away from this, you're going to automatically be sentenced to hell and all this stuff like that. And and obviously nowadays and older and doing this work, I realize that that's not the case at all. But what these people thought thousands of years ago, I mean,
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I truly believe that. And I mean, religion. That's why I fell out of religion, is because I
yeah.
realize it's all about the money to them. It's been that way
Oh,
forever, and they still are a government in some ways, because they control politics to a certain degree, because they influence things. I mean, look at the
yeah.
Pope. The Pope
I know.
has his own city.
I know. I know. I was just going to say, the most corrupt people in the world. The thing that gets me right about the Bible is that Jesus was crucified by the Romans, but yet they're the ones who are the head of Christianity. Like, that's the part that always got me. It's like, why isn't anybody else? I mean, I understand the whole story, Constantine, transition and all this stuff, but I just find that so weird. It's like the Romans crucified Jesus Christ, but now we worship him. It's just the weirdest thing, in my opinion.
Well, because he supposedly came back and scared them to death.
Oh, well, of course, yeah. But I just think it's so funny that the ones who
Yeah,
are the leaders of Christianity, I just find that great.
yeah. Well, I mean, and also you got to remember, it was Jewish Romans that crucified him, supposedly.
No, yeah, no, you're right. No, I
So,
mean, don't get me wrong. The people are the ones who chosen to be crucified, but I'm saying it's just funny the ones who carried it out. The Romans and stuff like
well,
that, and it's funny to see how Rome now is the Vatican and the whole. You know what I mean? It's just so funny to see, in my
which
opinion.
that's my dream. So that's my dream. If there's ever a zombie apocalypse,
Yeah.
I am going to the Vatican, and I am trying to figure out everything they have there that they don't tell anybody.
Right. Yes, I know. I know.
I
I'd
mean,
love to go.
the things that are hypothesized to be in their library in the basement of the Vatican are just,
Out of this world.
I mean, aliens and everything else. I mean, just anything that could exist, they're supposed to know about. And I would just love to read, I would love to read their freaking exorcism records. Like that
I,
one thing alone, I'd spend weeks reading those.
oh, I know. I
But
know.
which, yeah. So trying to think of I mean, the man, a man in a suit is a very common, what people call the devil is the man in the suit. He's making deals. That's what he does.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, yeah, I never have had sleep paralysis, which I thank whoever you want to thank for that, because it's
Yeah.
just every story I hear about it is not pleasant and in the slightest, and it's pure fear.
No. It's pure fear because you're out of control. You have no control. And that's, I think, the biggest fear part of it. Same thing with the paranormal, why people get so upset or so scared. It's because, something's happening around you, but yet you can't see who or what it is. So it's like, if they want to hurt you, they could, because you wouldn't even see it coming. So, it's the same kind of, thing with it, the terrifying aspect to it is the not having control.
Yeah, which not having control is what most people fear, is not having control. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you so do you have one or two more experiences you want to do, and then we'll after that we can jump to creature features?
I would actually love to jump to creature features, but we could definitely do one more if you'd like. I'm kind of pumped about creature features. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, let's do one more just because
All right. All right.
you don't have any experiences with anything non-spiritual or non-heaven or hell, right?
Like what kind you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like experiences? Just tell me.
Like cryptids or anything more physical?
I was gonna say no, but they're actually, I can't really remember it too much, but when I was a kid, there was, I forget where I was. I was with family, but we were in a forest. We were like camping somewhere. And when we were in the camp, when I was in my tent, I would end up waking up in the middle of the night, and I was a young kid. I can't remember how old I was, but something big was walking around our campground, but yet everyone else, my, family and everyone was sleeping and stuff like that. And I happened to wake up. And I tell you what, sitting in that tent, it wasn't a regular animal. Like it sounded like a human being, just a really big human being. So could I have had an experience with Bigfoot? Of course, maybe, who knows? But I never saw it with my eyes because I was too terrified to open that tent and see what was walking around. But you could hear a bipedal creature. It wasn't something on his fours. It was, it was a weird thing. And when it breathed, it was I don't know if you want to call a mouth breather, but it was very like, I wouldn't say grunting, but it was like making
Guttural. Guttural.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best word you could use. Yeah. But I was too terrified, man. I was a young kid and I was too terrified to open it. But now that I'm older and we're talking about cryptids, I wish I did, because if I did have a Bigfoot encounter, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, which actually that does sound like a lot of Bigfoot encounters that people have seen over the years.
Yep.
It's just, I mean, that vision. I mean, did you see any shadow on the tent wall, or was it too dark for that?
No, it was dark. That's the part that scared me the most, because the fire had just like simmered down to the point where you couldn't see a shadow on the thing. This was like in the middle of the night, dude. Like maybe like 3:30, 4 in the morning.
Well,
So
that is the time of night that they would be out, because
yeah,
that's when humans won't see them, and
yeah,
we have to
and we have
believe.
all the mountains. We have the Appalachian Mountains right near us. I mean, there could be a whole traveling of them, going through all of USA.
Well, I mean, actually, by me, Leominster, Massachusetts, is known to have Bigfoot sightings in the
Oh,
in the Leominster State Forest.
oh, that's pretty cool.
So, I mean, I've yet to be down there and go hiking there or anything. My
I was
wife
just,
and my wife and kids love to go hiking, so we may have to go down there one day and go for a hike. But we've been
oh,
hiking. We've been hiking in Freetown, state forest down in the South Shore, which is the Bridgewater Triangle, and that forest is where a lot of satanic rituals happened in the 80s and 90s that cops caught cults
wow,
doing. And
wow.
Bigfoot has been seen in that forest as well, but we walked around. We didn't get too deep in because we didn't want to get lost, especially with kids.
Yeah.
But it's just we didn't see anything, of course, because it was the middle of the day. You're not going to see them.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, right? So Bigfoot, people have this theory that they could be somehow tied with UFO and alien type experiences. What's your opinion on that? Because I've been reading a lot about it, and I want to hear what your opinion is.
And that, folks, we will start creature feature because this will go into Bigfoot first. That's just
There
the
we-
way. That's the way it's going to be, and it's the perfect segue in. So, oh boy, my favorite topic in the world. I am very familiar with the Bigfoot UFO partnership theory, as I am also well aware of the Bigfoot possibly being an extra dimensional creature that can go in and out of our dimension when he wants to. And that's why he doesn't get seen. Which could that be related to aliens? Very possibly, because it's highly debated that aliens can travel through space because they know how to go through dimensions.
Yeah.
Which I've also heard the other theory that is less known, less likely, but I like it. What if Earth is a prison planet for aliens and Bigfoots are just a species that other aliens don't like? So when they do something bad, they trap them on Earth.
You know what? I mean, who's to say you're wrong on that? I mean, nobody truly knows. And, it's wild to see because they are very intelligent. And how have they been able to be elusive without anyone truly capturing it? You know what I mean? So it's wild to think.
I mean, it goes into so many other theories as well. I mean, if Earth is a prison planet, for God's sake, that could explain dogmen, that could explain chupacabra, that could explain lake monsters, for God's sakes, and sea serpents and whatnot. It could explain rakes too, or pale crawlers, whatever you want to call them. A lot of different cryptids could be explained if that was a true theory. Because what if it is like that show, People of Earth, and the three main alien species work together: the Greys, the reptilians, and the Norse looking aliens. What if they work together and they trap other alien species that do bad things on Earth? Because we're a backwards dirt planet, as the aliens in Marvel Universe call Earth. We're a backwards dirt planet where we just crawled out of the water a couple thousand years ago, and we're nothing special yet.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I feel like to aliens, I feel like we're an ant farm to them, and they're just observing, just adding little variables in to see what happens, or having natural disasters to see what happens. And it's weird, to see these things observing us, but yet we have no idea what they are,
Oh, I mean, let alone the fact that the government has admitted now that there's unidentified aerial UAPs phenomenon, and that there is unidentified flying objects that they have not been able to explain, but they know they exist, and they are now saying, "Oh yeah, these 100% exist. Take your mind off COVID. Take your mind off COVID for a little while in the state of America, and look at this." Which is basically why I believe it was Trump did it, and then Biden did it some more, releasing more information. But like the Tic Tac UFO videos that was taken by the Air Force and Marines. I mean, it's just
funny because you watch it and it's like they're releasing bits of information every so often, right? And I believe that they're going to finally admit that yes, there's alien life, but I feel like they're afraid to just jump right into it because of chaos and panic from the country or the people around the world. But there's been leaders from Canada who have stated that yes, we've been visited for thousands of years by these aliens that have came, and the government stating right on TV this, and other countries around the world have had crazy experiences and have came clean about it, like Russia and other foreign countries over there and stuff. So I mean, why we're taking so long and why we're so worried about panic, I mean, who knows? But I think it gives the churches time to make it, into their, like, it's okay into their curriculum, because I think the biggest fear I think they're worried about is that if we just automatically said, oh yeah, aliens are here, they're driving UFO, they're intelligent civilization, it's like, well, does that just abolish all religion? So now they're kind of like, just like how they did with being first, like churches, right? They were homophobic. Like in the Bible, it's a sin to be gay, right? But have you noticed since gay marriage has been okay now and more in the eyes? Have you noticed? I mean, where I live in Connecticut, I've noticed churches putting up pride flags and saying we welcome everyone. And we I think it's great personally, but I think it's weird that that's how they have to go about it. because they're scared of whatever it may be that could demolish their religion or whatever it may be, It's scary. It's scary to see how they do that.
It is, because I drive around a lot for work all around Massachusetts, and
Yeah.
I see that as a very common thing now, where since that and since BLM too, since that big movement last year or 2 years ago now, whenever it was,
Yeah.
all these churches now say like they have the rainbow flags in front, and they have the all lives matter in front, or Black Lives Matter in front, whichever one they want to have. But
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes me think of the South Park episode where the aliens are sitting in the Vatican with like the consensus of priests, and
Yep.
like
Oh,
when they're
it's
talking
so
the whole episode where Cartman creates his own church because the church is touching little boys, but
yeah. Yeah.
which we know that happened. I'm not gonna get into it because we all know what happened. It's been movies about it now and everything else. But as far as aliens go, there are cave paintings of deer,
yeah.
of cattle, and then right next to them, there's paintings of things that we now call grays, and they look exactly the same almost. So cavemen only drew something on a wall if they saw it, because they had no imaginations. They weren't that bright. They may have had small imaginations, but they weren't that bright. And they're not going to create a whole new species just off the top of their head. So if there's cave paintings, if there's all the like the pyramids and all these other the Aztecs, like all these structures that yes, we think we know how, oh, these people could have built them this way. But do you really think they were thinking of that stuff back in the BC? Like it's
this ties in, not to cut you off, this ties into also with everything else that we've been talking about, because it's like, same thing with the Bible. Like people will go and they'll read the Bible and they'll take it very literally to the fact, to the point. And a lot of the stories, especially in the Old Testament, how do we know that they're not being the words that are being spoken or translated to us aren't symbolism, just like the ancient civilizations used to say, like what UFOologists think. They believe that they would represent a spacecraft as a bird.
Yep.
And you bird, these like plane looking things. I mean, look at the Mayans. We've had people that look like they're in spacesuits. I mean, that they've, constructed on their things. I mean, same thing with, the Bible, like I was saying, like, these people lived thousands of years ago, and they have their symbolism and way of mannerisms to talk and to describe things. Now, 2000 years later, we have, maybe a higher consciousness, or we have more understanding, and we say different words, but still it means exactly what the Mayans were saying. The only difference is they use maybe a rooster to say that it was a spacecraft, and we actually say spacecraft. So, I mean, it all ties in together like that, So I truly like how the conversation is, man.
100%. I mean, what if all the old gods of every religion were just aliens making themselves look like humans so that they could, and they can do all these great things, but all they gotta do is say, we are gods. Because there's always the word gods has always, in whatever language the native people speak in that part of the world, it's always been a word. It's or the bringer of this, the bringer of life, the bringer of corn, like every.
And why were they gods? They were gods because they were able to do stuff that has never been seen before. So intelligent civilization coming down to a primitive ancient civilization, helping them create, say, a pyramid, or helping them create a megalithic structure carrying huge rocks over, like levitating them or whatever. God forbid if that was the case, like UFOologists think. I mean, how would they interpret that?
They'd have to be gods. I mean,
have to be gods.
I mean, to the Greeks, Poseidon comes out of the sea with a sea serpent, and for all we know, it could just been an alien. And this is my pet. This is Sparky. But I mean,
right.
Like that'd be awesome to believe if that was really the case. But it's just it's hard not to question everything once you start questioning something, and that's the problem and that's why it's just we'll never get down to the true answers for a long, long time, because every question you think you have an answer for opens up 20 more questions.
Oh, I know. But it's like when you're into it so deep, it's like it just makes it that much more fun. but it does get frustrating when you're trying to get an answer and you have 20 more questions instead of an answer. So I totally agree, man. Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I listen to a mythology podcast every week, and the stories they do, oh, actually, I listen to two, and the stories they do, just, it's the same as the Bible, though. Over time, people have edited everything to make it sound the way that this king wants it, or this duke wants it, or this king wants it to sound. The Bible
Yeah.
has what, 23 missing books, I think, or something like
Oh,
that.
Gospel of Judas, Gospel of Mary, Gospel of Thomas. I mean, you name it, Enoch. I mean, and I tell you what, the thing that makes me so upset is the book of Enoch actually has UFO encounter in it, but Constantine wouldn't put that in, or whoever. I'm sorry, not Constantine, whatever person it was that created the king who created put all the
King,
books together.
King
Bible.
James.
There you go, King James. Yes, King James. I should have known that just by the Bible I have.
Yeah, because yeah,
But
I mean, I actually had a history teacher in high school that talked about this when we were talking about religions, and
yeah,
it's just the amount that all religious texts have changed over the last 2,000, 3,000 years even is insane, and just it's part of the reason I can't believe in religion, because they let people change their holy text. You If you really believed in the religion, you weren't just trying to make money and scare people, you wouldn't let that happen.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, no, I totally agree, and like I said, people are still taking text 2000 years ago that, is today. And I'm not saying that we can't live off of that or learn things from that in the past, but to walk around and take every single thing literal is something that could be dangerous. It could be dangerous, and I believe that's why a lot of wars have been started over religion, because things have been taken out of context.
100%. And they changed it to make certain people look like the bad guys because that's who their country was at war with at that moment.
I mean, look at Muslims, right? For example, Muslims have been hated since 9/11 because they're all terrorists, the Quran, it's evil, all this stuff. And let me tell you something, I've studied more than just Christianity. I've been studying like every mainstream religion for the past almost 10 years now. And I got to study with a teacher with the Quran. And let me tell you something, that religion has more respect for their sacred stuff and their sacred rituals and stuff than a ton of other religions don't. You know what I mean? And these people, they wash their hands, their ears, their feet before they can even touch the Quran, which is such an amazing respect factor. And you realize from them reading it that the people who are these terrorists or extremists, they're translating it in the way that they're at it in an evil aspect, where most people that study this, Muslim culture and the Quran and stuff like that, it's not about that. It's just the same thing about the Bible. It's about love, but that whole aspect got missed. And it's just one person will always translate something different than the rest. And I think that makes it dangerous when they start taking it literal. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%, which, I mean, religion itself is just a whole another topic I can go on about for hours and hours.
Oh, it makes me very upset. It makes me very upset, to hear some of the stuff that goes on, especially one of the biggest things for me, and we'll get off this topic, but one of the biggest things for me is each religion sits there and says, well, this is the only religion, this is the right religion, and Christianity does that more than a lot of people. I mean, so does obviously, the Muslim culture as well, but they're not too prominent. Like, you'll see Christians like, well, if you don't believe in Jesus or you don't believe in this, like, you're going to hell. And in reality, it's like, if you're talking about a God that's loving and merciful and loves us, why would he be like a kid on an anthill with a magnifying glass sitting in the sun and saying, well, I put you here, I wiped your memory so you don't know what you are, who you are, where you're from, and you just have to find the right religion. And if you don't, you're screwed. I just don't see that. You know what I mean?
No.
I see that, and that's when I asked the spirits that, they were like, no, listen, it doesn't matter about what you're doing here, good or bad. But the thing is that it's an experience, and you're gaining knowledge through the consciousness and through your experiences that you're having. And according to them, we all came down with a birth plan, a pre-birth plan, with spirit guides that are pushing and directing us through certain doors. And, and they said to me, we can come down and want to be, say, a caretaker, or we want to experience a sickness, because it's like being a doctor in school. you're never going to be able to, or a surgeon in school, you're never going to be able to operate on somebody until you get hands-on experience. So for them, they have all the book knowledge, being in the afterlife and being in this all-knowing consciousness, wherever, heaven or whatever. And then they come to earth and they want to have hands-on experience of the negativity, of the, the hardship and stuff. So someone may come back and say, I want to experience cancer, and later on in life they get cancer, and all of a sudden that's what their whole experience was for their consciousness to come down here, which I find absolutely crazy personally when they said that to me. But like I said, who knows? Everything is theories in the paranormal, and no one has the actual facts. So who knows?
Which, all right, well, I'm gonna segue out of the Bible talk by going to the next creature, which,
yeah, I was gonna say, let's go to a creature, man. Let's go to a creature.
But
I don't know how I even got to that point, but I'm very sorry.
Well, because we were talking about Bigfoot and aliens and that, like the ancient religion, but that's the path it has to go down eventually.
Give me another creature though, my man.
But since we're talking about the Bible and the parts of the Bible that have been taken out, did have mentions, even in Genesis, there are mentions of dinosaurs, and there's dragons mentioned 13 times in the Bible, I believe it is, or something like that, some number around there. And there's a podcast I was going to listen to at one point that was called like Dragons in the Bible, but the guy's voice was so monotone I couldn't keep interested. But so the creature we're going to go into is Nkole Mbembe, and which, have you heard of this?
I've heard of it, but I don't remember what exactly.
In Africa, which I want to say, I keep meaning to break notes about this part, but I want to say Kenya, but I could be wrong. In some part of Africa, there's a giant lake, and there is a dinosaur-like creature that's supposed to live in it. And there's been tons of reports of people seeing it, and the people in Africa call it Nkole Mbembe. Macaulay Mbembe. They call it that. That's the African name for it. But since I was in elementary school, the books I used to take out of the library at school about cryptids had all the basic ones, Bigfoot, Loch Ness, so on, so on. But at the end, there's a section of what if dinosaurs still exist in the deepest jungles of the earth.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I mean, look at, like we were just talking about Bigfoot. Look at Bigfoot. It's very elusive. People have short glimpses or whatever, short encounters, or even like long, terrifying ones that they don't have a camera for. But the ones that capture on camera are very short. Who's to say that there isn't, say, a megalodon in the ocean still, or whatever, what I mean? So, I mean, it's totally possible. I totally agree with that. I mean, it totally could be. I mean, look at Loch Ness, look at all those, things that people have seen. I mean, there was a video I just watched on Discovery Plus with cryptids, and there was this kid in a boat. His dad was taking a picture from the beach, or a video, I mean, from the beach. And this, I don't even know what it was, but some creature in the water had multiple fins and was literally just going full speed through the water, at least 20 miles an hour. It was quick and it was huge. So, I mean, who knows, who knows what could be in there? We don't know everything that's under the ocean, or in the lakes or whatever. So
we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the bottom of the ocean. So I 100% believe megalodons still exist, because I just posted an article. I think I posted it anyway in my Paranormal the Normal Facebook group of a hunter killed a 30-foot crocodile or alligator, a 30-foot alligator. A hunter shot and killed it because it was terrorizing a local population, eating their animals, like eating full-grown cows and everything else. So he only hunts if he has to, because communities ask him to. But and I've seen articles before about sea monster carcasses getting washed up on shores, but a couple days later, the article seems to disappear and everybody stops talking about it, which I fully believe is the Men in Black or some version of it.
You know what? You totally could be right. And I like the censorship of our government and the hidden aspects of our government, like the Men in Black or covert opera stuff. I mean, we don't even know how deep it goes. So it could be.
I mean, I always say, because I hear stories on Monsters Among Us all the time of people talking about their grandparents who told the story, and they say, like, these two men in suits drove up in a black sedan to the house. They talked to them and said, if you say anything about this, we can't promise what will happen to you. And the grandparents a lot of times will keep quiet for until their deathbeds, and they'll tell their grandkids or grandkids, and
Mhm.
that's how these stories going on. I just heard one today about that. I can't remember what kind of creature it was though. I can't, but I mean, it's just a whole nother realm of the things that Men in Black could be covering up, whether the government created these things through experimentation in the 30s, 40s, who knows, or if they just
Yeah.
know, or they just know of these things' existence. And like you said,
Yeah.
look how much the world freaked out when COVID became a thing.
Yes.
Imagine if there were living, breathing creatures around
Oh,
us, it would be 10 times worse. People would
absolutely.
screw hoarding toilet paper, everything be hoarded because people
Mm.
would be afraid to leave their houses if they believed these things were truly as widespread as they may be. Which,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at Bigfoot or Dogmen, there are sightings from basically coast to coast. Yes,
Oh,
you're not gonna see either in New York City, in Boston, in LA,
yeah.
but you go anywhere where there's a decent amount of woods, and it's 100% freaking possible.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, small town monsters on the Bigfoot Discovery.
Hmm.
I haven't actually watched it yet, but I listened to their podcast and they talked about in Olympia State Park they found nest, like big nest on the ground that could easily be Bigfoot nest,
Oh, wow.
where they sleep, where they could sleep and where they could raise their young.
Wow.
And you hear reports all the time of older,
Yeah.
grayer looking Bigfoots, or
Yep.
you hear reports of juvenile Bigfoots, which
Yeah.
if there's older and there's juvenile looking ones, and then there's ones in the middle,
Yep.
they're mating. They have to be. And
Oh,
I've heard the theory that maybe you see them together when they're young, when the juvenile is young, but once they get to a certain age, they're basically
no.
kicked out of the house and forced to go find their own place to roam, and they have to find a female on their own or a male on their own, depending what they are.
Yep. It's so crazy to think though that with Bigfoot's, what you just said, procreating and stuff like that, and having young, it's like we can't look at these creatures as animals. Because they're way more intelligent than even us. So it's like, how have they evaded us for so long and we've only caught glimpses? You know what I mean? If they're having young, there's got to be a good amount of them. So where are they? You know what I mean? Like, why have we not discovered, say, a home of all of these, or whatever? Like, they have to be that intelligent. I think to like hunt one of these, or not hunt, but to try and capture one of these, you can't think of it as an animal. I think you have to think of it like a human aspect, because the consciousness in that thing is so intelligent the way that it seems.
There's a story that was on Monsters Among Us like 4 or 5 years ago, well, like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, and
Mhm.
I like to bring it up a lot when I talk about Bigfoot because it's the most incredible story I've ever heard. Basically,
Yeah.
a man in the South of America, I believe Georgia or something like that, was hunting, fell out of his tree stand, broke his back,
Oh.
and he remembers being picked up. He heard noises and things walking around him as he's laying there screaming for help, hoping his family realizes eventually to come looking for him because as he said, when you go hunting, you always tell your family where you plan on going in case something happens.
Yep.
But basically, he was picked up by a female Bigfoot and forced to drink milk from her breast.
Wow.
And the whole time he said it was the most horrible tasting, horrible smelling thing he ever had. And the whole time that the female Bigfoot is holding him, however, he can see the outline of something in the woods behind her
Mm.
that's bigger, and keeps grunting at her, and she grunts back at it or him, whatever you want to call it, and they basically go back and forth like a married couple for a while, like
Mm.
like the male saying like leave her, leave him, he's a human, leave him,
Yeah.
but but she wants to be a mother and help him. And once his family found him later that night, they found him, they came and got him, but he was scared shitless basically for the times after the big feet left. Like
Oh, yeah.
he was scared shitless, and he said though the doctors don't understand how his back healed as fast as it did.
Wow.
So
That's,
what?
yeah.
Because these creatures live in the wild for so long, what if the mother's milk has peeling properties to it almost because it's they have to live in the wild and they probably get hurt a lot when they're doing things or when they're trying to take down a tree. What do they do if a tree falls on them?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
a tree if a tree falls in the woods, can a Bigfoot hear
Yeah. That's good.
it? But I mean, it's just I love to tell that story because, and I would love to get the guy's name was Mac. I would love to get him on my show because he would be a phenomenal interview to actually ask him the questions I want to ask him. But I've
Yeah.
yet to find a way to reach out to him. I don't think he's social media savvy at all. So it's a pipe dream basically. But
Oh, hey, let it go, man. You know, dreams become reality. It's a matter of how, you keep
yeah,
going.
yes, they do because I'm in the process of getting Derek Hayes from Monsters Among Us on this show eventually.
Awesome.
So that's another dream that definitely is slowly coming true. And Derek, if you
Cool.
ever hear this, I look forward to it greatly.
Yeah.
But all right, let's jump to something. Well, and I failed to mention this actually when we were talking about dinosaurs.
Yeah.
There have been multiple sightings of pterodactyls in the Midwest and West United States.
Oh, really?
There have been
Heard
multiple.
that.
It was on Monsters and Mysteries in America at one point, and I've heard other counters talked about on podcasts that are similar. But basically, back in the 50s, 70s, something like that, there was kids were playing in the front yard of a house in the suburbs, and all of a sudden the mother's doing dishes looking out the window, and she sees this gigantic bird-looking thing come flying down, and it grabs one of the boys by his shirt, and starts to fly away with it. And then she calls her husband. Husband screams for all the neighbors. They all come out, and it's the West of America, so they all start blasting at it with guns. Try not to hit the kid, but eventually, whatever this creature is, drops the kid and just flies off and says, "Okay, I'm out of here. This is getting dangerous. I'm just gonna give up this kid and go find something else to eat." But it's just crazy. I mean, and it was, I believe, an 8-9-year-old boy, so not small enough of a kid that like
100-pound kid almost.
Yeah, it's not small enough of a kid that one of the bigger birds we know about could, like a falcon or a condor, could carry away. Like they wouldn't be able to support that weight in their claws. But
yeah,
it's just, and there's been multiple sightings of pterodactyls. And what if that is what thunderbirds are? What if thunderbirds are pterodactyls that Native Americans saw, and the sound of the wings flapping was so loud that they classified it as thunderbirds?
Yeah, you're right. That's a good theory. Thought of it like that. The only dinosaur thing that I've heard, like a story that I've heard of, like a sighting, is somewhere in, I don't know exactly where this is, but it's in the jungle somewhere, and they say that there's a raptor. There's like a velociraptor.
South America. I've heard of this.
Yeah, you've heard of this, right? Yeah, there's a famous comedian named Bobby Lee, a little Chinese guy a Korean guy who talks about it.
I know Bobby Lee.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So he talks about his experience on I think it was the Joe Rogan podcast, about going to this, South Asia or South whatever thing and going to look for this raptor, but I guess this village really believes that people have been taken by it. And so I mean, I couldn't imagine seeing a velociraptor, honestly, in the wild. I would never want to see one. So God bless those people.
I'd be standing there with my hands up, blue, stop it,
Yeah.
Stop it. But I mean, what if it is like a land of the lost, or if you want to go Marvel Comics, what if it's a Savage Land type thing where there are pockets of Earth where time has stood still and things didn't die out, and they just, like in China, I believe it's China or Japan, they just discovered not long ago a part of the forest where there are trees that mankind has not seen in recorded history that are growing. They're only in ancient text or in oral stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally possible.
So what if those forests that still exist have dinosaurs still?
Yeah.
But I mean, my stepson's in the room. He just heard me say dinosaurs still, and his jaw dropped, and he's like, "What? Can we go to Jurassic Park? Can we go to Jurassic Park?" But this Friday we will, or hopefully. But well, by the time this episode's dropped, we'll be seeing it hopefully. But
yeah.
But I mean, it just is a whole thing with different. I mean, there's so many different examples. I mean, this is a little off of dinosaurs completely, but there's been reports of a pilot in the army during the 40s or 50s flying
Yeah.
over Africa because he was doing supply runs, and he looks down from his plane, and there's a snake bigger than he can see it from the air. That's how big the snake is, and
Oh, wow.
it's going through the treetops in the African jungle, and
Wow.
supposedly it tried to bite at his plane.
Wow. Yeah.
Like
Wow.
it had to be.
That's,
He estimates it. I forget the exact number, but 30 to 60 feet, something like that.
oh my gosh.
Like
I mean,
he saw the head part and he saw the body through the trees, but he couldn't see where it ended.
wow.
And I mean,
Yeah.
yes, anacondas get freaking huge. Everybody knows
I,
that.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, even look at Florida now. I mean, well, all the pythons that are growing down there and everything, and it's wild. They get huge. They really do. And
Uh,
if the
they do.
environment, fun.
I was watching a show on Discovery Plus actually before I canceled it because I had to cancel some streaming service. I got too many, but
I don't blame you.
and I hated cutting Discovery Plus because I just never get a chance to go on it because there's so much on Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus. But I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh my god. So yeah, the Giants. Yeah, I was watching a show in there about that in Florida about these basically wildlife patrol who their job is to catch poisonous snakes that people call in that are not originally from Florida, and they're
Mhm.
supposed and they catch them and they collect venom for hospitals and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I forget what it was called, but it was an interesting show. And they also catch those little brown lizards that like have the big ass mouths. But
Talking about, yep.
I mean, it's a good show. It was interesting to watch because of their personalities and whatnot. And I
Yeah.
I grew up terrified of snakes because I have a mother and a grandmother who are terrified of snakes. So it was bred into me. Snakes are
Yeah.
evil. They will kill you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for the longest time, looking at a picture of a snake in a book would make me start to shiver and get cold.
Oh, I can only imagine, man. I'm that way with spiders. So spiders, not a spider fan.
But basically, I got over it a little bit eventually, and I started being able to watch shows like this. And I mean, still, I wouldn't want to be face to face with one of these things, but
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I've been face to face with like garter snakes, but that's a whole different story than a python.
Whole different story. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just interesting because like they do get huge, and there have to be there. I mean, reptiles alone, we discover at least I think 60, 70 new species a year that we didn't know existed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the amount of species that we have found just in the past 5 years has been wild. And that's the only on land. Imagine what else they found in like in the ocean, obviously all the new creatures they found in the ocean. Just grabbing my charger.
It's all good. I already plugged my laptop in, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Well,
mean, so that's another experience I heard about where it's just like, wow, like if you could see a snake from a plane, like not a,
yeah.
it wasn't a Boeing or anything like that. It was a warplane back in the 40s or 50s. So yes, they're not flying that high, but they're flying
Yeah.
high over a jungle. They're going to be flying high enough where they're not going to hit trees and stuff. So
Yep.
I mean, if they could
Still
see
to
this,
reach out and almost get the plane. I mean, that's a big snake,
yeah, and apparently he talked to locals about it when it happened, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we know they exist."
Gotta love the locals. They're like, oh yeah, no big deal.
They're like, "We avoid that part of the jungle."
I
But
mean, I would man-eating snake. No, I'm good with that.
well, I think all right. Well, since you're into cryptids a lot more than a lot of the guests I've had, I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk about this one with you because I brought it up with a lot of guests and they're like, "A what?" So
All right.
we're gonna talk about those who should not be named by Native American cultures, skinwalkers.
Walkers. I was just gonna bring that one up, or a Wendigo, one of the two I was gonna bring up, but
Similar, but not the same.
no, you're right. You're right. Skinwalkers, man. I tell you what, I've always wanted to go to Skinwalker Ranch, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, me and you have both talked to Brandon, who owns it right now. The
No, I
billionaire.
haven't.
Oh, you haven't?
I put him in that I put him in that tweet on Twitter trying to get
Yeah.
him to come on the show, but
Yeah, he looks like he's down, and I would definitely reach out more because I mean, he even did the same thing with me when I personally messaged him and I mean personally like wrote to him on his Twitter, and he was down for it, I believe. So, he'd be a great guest to get on, because what's going on there is
Phenomenal.
crazy.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I watched the first 2 seasons of Secret Skinwalker Ranch, and
Oh yeah.
and so that's how I knew who he was right away when I saw his name and picture. I was like, I
Yep.
know him from the show, and
Yep.
and just the stuff they've uncovered in the first 2 seasons of that show that they show you is crazy, crazy, crazy. And
Yep.
I mean, Skinwalkers, I mean, there also were, I just listened to a podcast with a Native American on it, and he refused, like he called them like shim washers, because he refuses to use the real word, because they're told their whole lives, you don't say the word or they will come for you.
Yeah.
But I don't particularly fear it because I don't live anywhere near the Western United States. So
how about, you ever hear, you saw Blind Frog Ranch?
I've heard of it. I've never actually looked too deep into it, but I've heard of it as well.
Well, there's that show, and in this show, one of the episodes that I watched, this guy has a camera around like near his campers. And this guy looks like he's actually getting possessed. He's standing there and he's like, oh, and he's like freaking out. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, that's right near my camper. My wife and kids are there. I gotta go. And he just like runs out of the house and where the cameras were facing everything, and he goes towards it, but they cut the episode. But I was like, oh man, like, whether it's real or it's not, if anything like that was to happen and I was seeing someone being like possessed like that to turn into a skinwalker, I'd be out.
I mean, from my understanding of what they are basically the witch doctor version of Native American culture, just sorcerers and healers, that's the right word, healers, who use the abilities they have for negative purposes. And they can turn into either, it's always been debated whether it's one animal or it's any animal they want at will. And they could just do it. Like I've heard stories on podcasts of car being chased by a coyote wolf looking creature. And then they look back when it stops, and they look back again and it's a human, or vice versa. They see
the car like whatever, how many miles an hour. Yep.
I mean,
truckers see it down south. They'll be driving on those desert roads, and all of a sudden, creature will just be running next to the truck, and then all of a sudden it'll just transfer into what looks like a human to them. So it's a scary thing, man. I mean, who's to say it's not? Who's to say it's not real? I mean,
if Native Americans say that exists, I tend to believe that it does exist in some form or another, because Native Americans were not the type of people who just make tall tales up. Like they American white settlers did that when they moved out into the old West. Like the what's that cat they made up? Or like there's
I'm trying to remember because I know exactly what
the cactus the cactus cat. Yeah, I think it's got a different name, but it's basically a cat that is made up of a cactus like material.
Yeah.
And there's a moose like creature too that like loggers made, like supposedly made up in early 18, like loggers and other people who came out to the West first for work made up a lot of legends about things that I think like the Snarlygaster or whatever it's called, but it's it's legends that they made up of things that a lot of people don't really believe these ever existed. It's just they would tell them as stories around the campfire at night because they were bored.
Yeah. No, I mean, I tell you what, there's like, I feel like a lot of folklore stories are, have started like that way, almost. But then again, like we said, with Native Americans seeing skinwalkers, like, yes, you're right. They were very credible, people that lived here way before we even came here. So obviously they would know way more than we would. But, like I said, it just like, okay, for example, like the Wendigo, right? I want to switch kind of over from Skinwalker to Wendigo. It's like, who's to say that these creatures, these, mystical creatures, who's to say that they're not real? You know what I mean? I mean, I don't find one personally, but look at all the encounters. I mean, so.
I mean, the fact that they're well known enough, the idea of a Wendigo, that, and we're talking complete opposites here, people. I mean, Skinwalkers are from the dry South. Wendigos are from the cold north of northern Maine to Canada, and even Montana and other parts of the United
Yeah.
States that are north. But
Yep.
I mean, the fact that Stephen King put Wendigos in Pet Cemetery,
Yeah. Yeah.
that right there, if an author like Stephen King is gonna be like, this creature is believable enough that I'm actually gonna put it in my book, not as the main monster, but it's just
Yeah.
something that exists in the woods where they bury these things and come back to life.
Did you see the show, the shock documentary that was on Discovery Plus? It was called Helltown.
Yes, I did see that.
Oh, that was a good show. I mean, I know it wasn't considered real because it was a made up documentary, but
Was
I
it?
thought it was. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I looked it up and they said that it was that. But I tell you what, the way that whole town got shut down and how everyone got moved out, that was all real. But I mean, why did that happen out of nowhere? I mean,
Well, from what I heard, and they made it seem very real that there was some kind of church that would take offerings to a creature in the woods, like
oh yeah,
goats.
yeah, they said that back in the civilization, yeah, when the settlers came here, yeah, they would do that. And there is the pillars there, the solid things that are in the ground that has a W on it for the Wendigo. But that actual documentary, if you look online, it's actually just a shock documentary. It's fake, but there's a lot of real facts in there. It's just not everything is real because they're not going to say a Wendigo is real. You know what I mean?
Well, that's yeah, the Men in Black wouldn't want that, but
Come on.
I mean, but and Wendigos, I feel like they have to be real because they're not just creatures that come out of nowhere. They are humans who do vile acts of cannibalism, as it's always been believed is what makes them, and
Mm,
they get a taste for human flesh, and they are transformed into a horrible creature who needs human
yeah.
flesh to survive. And the story of a settler in the, I want to say, early 1900s or late 1800s, that
Yeah.
a snowy winter he lost it, he was ate his family, and he
Oh
turned in.
wow.
And then when they came to look in the spring and check on them, they reported seeing a creature like that roaming around, that and they would hear it at night howling in the woods. And I
Oh
mean,
wow.
that's the last thing I ever want to hear is a Wendigo howling, because that's got to be scary as hell.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh
I'd rather hear a tree knocks. I'd rather hear tree knocks and a Bigfoot howling than that.
yes, absolutely. I mean, even though that would be scary too, I mean, I'd be all. I mean, at least with the Bigfoot, you don't know if you're going to get a good encounter or a bad. The Wendigo, you're getting a bad encounter.
I feel that if you know basic sign language, Bigfoots might be able to understand you a little bit. That's the way I've always felt.
Yeah, yeah. I
Like,
forget there was a guy on YouTube that not to go back to Bigfoots, but there was a guy on YouTube that caught like really good quality evidence, a video of Bigfoots, and he's had experiences. He was on Survive. He talked to the guy from Survivor Man when Survivor Man did that Bigfoot special. And this guy showed footage on the Survivor Man, like clear as day. You saw these Bigfoots, you saw the face of a child, a little one, a child Bigfoot. And he would bring this, the guy to all these locations that he stayed at. And he told this story about one night he crossed, you know how the Bigfoots will cross trees and stuff to
yep.
mark their location or travel stuff. Well, he said that he went past those marks where they blocked it off and he kept going. And at night, he was surrounded by a bunch of Bigfoots and they were throwing rocks and they were very violent and he was screaming and he was by himself. And he was like, yeah, they were throwing massive boulders at me and all this stuff. And it was a really good encounter that I listened to. And I tell you, like, I think his videos are credible, man. And I just wish that they a little more seriously.
Okay, now you're making. Now I have to Google something that you just reminded me of. That but I think it's called.
See, this is why the paranormal is so fascinating, because the paranormal is not just spirits or cryptids or this. Paranormal has so many subcategories that are in what paranormal is. And that's the best part about it. I love.
That yeah, okay. So, have you heard of the attack of Ape Canyon?
It sounds familiar, but no, you're gonna have to refresh my memory.
Well, and it was at Mount St. Helens in, I believe, Washington,
Yeah.
and these frontiersmen in 1924 were out there setting up a logging camp, and once they all went inside for the night and it got dark out, their building was propelled at by multiple rocks, and they started shooting at where they thought the rocks were coming from, and
Yeah.
it's called the Attack of Ape Canyon because it got named Ape Canyon because then there's now the trails there and everything called Ape Canyon Trails because that's where they looked out and they saw monkey like figures throwing rocks at them.
Oh, wow.
And you could hear them howling and talking throughout the night to each other.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And it scared these men to, like, I think a couple of them did die
Oh.
from getting like hit with rocks and whatnot. But
Oh, absolutely. I can imagine.
and I've heard stories too of truckers who are driving, like, will stop in the side of a road in the middle of the woods at night, and all of a sudden they'll get woken up by a sound of a huge rock hitting the side of their truck, and they go out and there's a dent there. And I've heard truckers say that they hear something jump up on the top of the truck and start walking around.
Ooh, that would terrify me.
Yeah, they said they were afraid. I believe it was a woman, a female truck driver that told this story. She said she ran and locked the doors and hid in the back of her cab until morning because she.
Oh, wouldn't you? Like I would.
Yeah, if they're attacking my truck, then yeah, 100% I would. Because you're not gonna be able to go out and be like, peace, me
Yeah.
friend. Like you do that, you're gonna get a rock to the face. But
Gonna snap like a Slim Jim. Blah.
the only way you could ever possibly make friends with a Bigfoot is, I believe, is you'd have to meet them in the wild, and before they even think anything, you'd have to try to talk to them through sign language or something. Where
Or off food, like some
Yeah.
type of food or something. I mean, that's the only way. Who doesn't bond over food?
truth. As
So-
I eat my pasta dinner my wife just gave me, but but yeah, I mean, and
That's it.
the last Bigfoot story I'm gonna say is there. This is in the earliest seasons of Monsters Among Us. I heard this one years ago. So basically, it was an adult now, but when he was a kid, he would go up to his grandfather's house in a cabin in the woods, kind of, and
Yeah.
he was washing dishes one night, and he looked out the kitchen window, and
Mhm.
there was a Bigfoot looking back at him, and
Oh, wow.
his grandfather said, "Oh, don't worry about him. I don't bother him. He doesn't bother me."
Oh, wow.
And or something like it was better than that, but that's basically the synopsis
No.
of it.
Yeah, but still, I mean, to be
Hey.
all notched, like
And there's also been, of course, stories of hunters that have supposedly shot and killed a Bigfoot, and then they go back to the grave where they buried it because they didn't want to get in trouble for shooting something that was an unknown species back then. And they go back and the grave's empty.
Yeah.
Which leads to, did other Bigfoot come and take the body and do
That's
whatever?
what yeah. But then
Because-
again, Men in Black.
But he didn't tell anybody, and it was in the middle of nowhere.
No, you're right. I think it's the Bigfoot taking them, and having their own burial because they're, like I said, they're intelligent creatures. They're intelligent beings.
But I mean, they have to have their own burial rights or some kind of death rights of their own, because
look at elephants.
or,
Look at elephants.
yeah,
Elephants hundreds of miles to mourn each year for someone one of their family that was died. So
but I'm happy you said that actually though, because there are elephant graveyards. No one's ever come across a Bigfoot graveyard in the woods.
no. Makes you wonder, like, what happens to them? Like, what is their burial? Like, do they bury just, in a certain location that we just haven't found, or in caves that we can't go into, or what?
Or do they possibly, like a lot of animals, eat their
Say
dead?
that. No, yeah, I was just about to say that because there's never been a trace of any of them. And if there's that many young, there's got to be them. You know what I mean?
I mean, do they eat their dead and then use the bones for something, or do they signal the mothership to say, "Hey, we have a dead body and we need you to pick it up"?
Yeah, I mean, there's like we're going back to the UFO tied into it. People are saying that they've seen like almost like a cloaking mechanism on some of these, these
There-
Bigfoots, like they'll just disappear into brush or whatever.
There is something that I've heard on podcasts over the last few years, and it's becoming a bigger thing. It's called Glimmermen. And
Oh, okay.
I'm sure you've heard of it, but it's for listeners who don't know, it's basically you're in the middle of the woods and you see something that looks like a human body, like a body shape, but
Yeah.
it's like predator technology almost from the movies, like, which
Yep.
I heard on some podcasts, I'm not going to try to say a name because I don't remember which one it was, that the person who wrote Predators, his father had experience with the government, and that may be where they got the idea for that from, is actual things that
Wow.
have this technology to cloak themselves.
Wow. Actually, that's smart.
I mean,
Didn't even.
whether it is a Bigfoot type thing or aliens that know how to cloak themselves, or it's a government experiment that's going on for 100 years that they've been trying to figure out how to make themselves invisible for the army, so they
Yeah.
can go attack a city without being seen. But who knows? I mean, it's one of those lines where it could be cryptids or it could be government because you don't know.
No, you're right. Yeah. It's such a blurred line, like it's like finding out the truth. Like it can be so exhilarating, but then so frustrating at the same time. Like we said, we're always ending up with more questions than answers. So, you know,
It's insane, and it just keeps going. Like you can go down any of these subjects forever, and they always somehow turn around back into each other as well. It's
yeah.
just never ending. But I think we will do what I just had a cryptid in mind too. Now I'm freaking losing it on which one it was I was thinking of, but all right. Here's one that I don't talk about in this show that often, just because. All right, actually, I'm gonna do two because that was the other topic I was thinking about since I brought up Glimmermen.
All right.
Have you heard of Mirrored Men?
No, I have not.
This is a recently new phenomenon that's been reported. Uh, Monsters Among Us has had multiple callers in who have told similar stories about what possibly could be mirrored men. But
Yeah.
there's another podcast I can't think of the name of where they actually coined the term mirrored men.
Oh
But
wow.
basically, what it is it's usually three human-looking men that they all walk in synchronization. Every move that one makes, the other one makes, and they're usually and they usually are wearing suits or something like that. And
Wow.
a lot of stories are people or kids looking out their windows when they're kids looking out their windows at night, and they see these three men walking down the street in the middle of the night under a street lamp or whatever, and they will come to hours later. So there's a missing time element as well.
Wow. Yeah, that goes back to the alien thing too.
I've also heard of one where someone was hiking in the woods in the middle of the day, and they saw three men walk down another path, and you're not supposed to look at them if you do see them coming, but they looked because they didn't know any better. And
yeah.
when she came to, it was nighttime, and
Wow.
she got to her car. It was 2-3 in the morning.
Oh wow.
So she either was taken somewhere and then put back exactly where she left off, or she got basically frozen in place, standing up on a trail for 8-10 hours.
See, during those type of stories that have happened, I would love for somebody to be there to see what they look like through the hours that they don't remember. Like, were they catatonic, or were they doing things that they don't know they were doing, or did somebody take them, or, it's the weirdest thing to think about. And I always wish that there was a witness to, see what that person was doing. Cause I would love to know, like, were they just a zombie state? You know what I mean? Like, what do they look like during that time, and what made them lose that time? So
Yeah.
fascinating. It really is.
Yeah, which that one is something one I only like to bring up with people who know the paranormal world, like cryptids a lot, because a lot of investigators I talk to who like are known for like investigating spirits and ghosts, they don't know the cryptid side of it all though. They just know what they do.
Yeah, they tend to stick in that one subcategory. For me, just the paranormal in general, like after opening my mind to the spirit and ghost type deal and having my experiences, I thought now there's just so much more that needs to be explained that, I open my eyes to it, is what I should say.
All right, so we're gonna do one more and
Oh.
one more because this one I wanted to bring up too, but I want to bring up Mirror Men first. And
Okay.
this is one I've never done in this show. I've never done this one in this show, but
Okay.
there are so many examples of it around the world. Let's talk vampires.
Ooh, I like vampires, man. I like this story. I was actually just watching something on this the other night. Okay, so it obviously dates back to what, like Transylvania or Romania back in the day, where the people would literally, there would be like, you could even go there now, and the old cemeteries would have stakes in the hearts and stuff like that. And I tell you what, there was this one, which you've probably heard of this story. This guy,
Probably.
I don't was the guy died, and then all of a sudden whole town was getting sick, so they went and they, staked him or whatever. And he was like showing up in people's dreams, and they believed he was a vampire, and like it was a big ordeal where they like decimated the body, and it was all over the news. I forget exactly where it was, but it was on one of the shows that like Monster Quest or whatever. You were just saying Monsters Among Us or whatever. But it was a good story to hear. But there's a whole culture with vampires now where people actually believe they're vampires, drink each other's blood. I mean, well, what's your opinion, man?
Well, okay. One, the story you're mentioning, I don't remember it being a man. And sorry if I'm not looking at the camera right now. I spilled pasta on my wife's purse and on the floor, so I'm trying to clean it up before it sets.
Oh.
But and yes, listeners, you can laugh at that too. But I don't remember hearing about a man per se, but right in Rhode Island, the case of Mercy Brown.
Oh, see, I didn't hear about that one. This one was overseas. So yeah, no, that's tell me about that one, because I've never heard of Mercy Brown.
Basically, I believe that was her name. I could be getting it wrong, but I believe her name was Mercy. But basically, same type of story. She was sick. She died. And this was the first. There's a podcast called Lore done by Aaron Mahnke. And when he did a TV show, this is the first episode he did. And basically, she died from being sick. And the family still was getting sick. So they thought it was like a curse upon them.
Oh, wow.
So they dug her up. Well, not dug her up because it was winter. So they went to her coffin in the family, what do you call them? Mausoleum. And basically they saw that her body was still in perfect condition, like she just died the day before.
Oh, wow.
And I think her chest was still warm, and her chest was still warm, and her, what do you call it? Cheeks were still warm and red.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of this has been explained away by the science that we now know of what happens to a person, like how the body decays when it dies. Like it's been explained a lot by that. But basically, the father called the priest in, and because this was the 1700s or 1600s, the priest said, well, the only way to fix this is to take out her heart, cook it, burn it, and then give anybody sick in your family a tea with the ashes in it and make them drink it.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. It's not really, doesn't sound that pleasant of a beverage.
I mean, man.
Maybe
imagine how much else it would make them sick even more.
Yes. Which I believe they were dying of pneumonia or something like that we know about nowadays. But back then it was just, they're being cursed because they're sick, like everything else in the world. And basically, the mother died previously before this too. And they dug up the mother too, and her body was still perfectly preserved.
Oh, wow.
So it turned into this whole thing, and the whole town got involved, and basically, but a lot of it is explained away by how we know people decay now. And in the middle of winter, there's not going to be many bugs eating a person, and especially if she's in a mausoleum above ground.
Well, yeah, that's true. And also with the cold temperature despite being in a mausoleum, but if you're outside, right? I mean, the cold is going to preserve the body for a longer period.
Exactly my point. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the first vampire stories I know of that's recorded in American history. And I believe I have heard of a man, now I'm thinking about it, where like it was the same type thing. And it was just
it was on, but it was overseas, I believe, or something, or it was there or Mexico, one of the two, but I believe it was overseas.
Oh, it might have been in Mexico, now you mention it.
Yeah, you think so? Because I know these guys, they ended up getting arrested for decimating a body and all this stuff. And
I'm pretty sure that was Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one, of course, that's famous is the Highgate Cemetery vampire in the UK.
Yes, yes, you're right. You're right. I didn't even think about that. It's so weird because like we think about vampires because of the movies and stuff like that. Like, oh, they come out at night, they sleep in a coffin, they're upside down, whatever, all this stuff. They turn into bats. But it's so crazy that, like I was saying before, the culture that is now upbrought from it, where people are actually, having their teeth turn into fang, or fang looking, or having fake ones, whatever, and they're drinking each other's blood, and it's a real culture now where, I mean, like I said before, could something like that exist? I mean, who knows? I mean, look at we have people that have seen in their eye with their eyes werewolves or dogman or whatever you want to call it, but I mean, there's so many different cryptids that we've talked about that people have seen, especially Bigfoot, aliens, all those type of stuff. We already know that that's truthful. So it's like, what else is there?
Well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Dogmen because you said you've seen the site Dogmen Sighting Project, or where I always forget what it is, but I put a link to it in one of the shows a few weeks back. But basically, the map they have in their site of supposed Dogmen sightings all across the United States, even if half of those are freaking lies, that's a shitload of sightings still.
Dude, even if 97% is lies, that's still a good amount, though. I'm just saying,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that three still is significant. Even just one sighting that's credible is mind blowing. 9 million, you know what I mean? So, I mean, they can't all be seeing things. You know what I mean? They've got to be seeing something.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, and I hate the term werewolves. I freaking hate it because
Oh yeah,
as soon as you use the term werewolves, people are like, "Oh, that's just movie stuff or ancient legend stuff." But
of course.
what if dogmen have existed since ancient times? And like, that's actually one of the stories that we talked about dogmen with the guy 2 weeks ago who saw the devil 3 times, and his buddy he was in the army with, he was from New Orleans, his buddy, and they were in Egypt on a mission, and he saw a statue of what's his name, the wolf-looking god.
Oh, see, I'm bad with. I can't think of it offhand, but I know
it came to me last time, but I can't freaking think of it. It's not Ra. But anyway,
close though. You're close. I think
yeah. But anyway, his buddy saw that and he's like, "What is that statue of?" He's like, "I saw that outside my house in New Orleans when I was a kid."
Wow.
So and like he to tell him like that's an ancient Egyptian god that's a statue of, and he was like, "I saw it though twice."
Yeah.
Like his friend saw it once outside his bedroom window in the backyard at night, and then he saw it again when he was fishing or something outside or exploring the woods. He saw it swimming. He saw it swimming down a river.
Oh my god, forget that. Nah. Gotta be good, man. That's why I stay away from the forest. With the woods.
I am not a fan of the woods because I don't know what's out there. That's why I say.
Exactly. At nighttime, you don't know what's coming at you. So.
But yeah, so I mean, it's just any of my listeners who want to hear that story in full, told by the person who really told it, go back 2 episodes ago and give it a listen because that whole episode was amazing. Same as this one. I have a feeling this is going to become one of my highest listening to episodes as well. And I know you have more experiences, so we definitely will get you back on at some point.
Oh, dude, I have too many. I mean, it's kind of crazy how many I have. I did send you a couple of videos, hoping you could share them with your audience and stuff. And I'll share one of them. One of them that I sent you was during Christmas this year. I lost my father and my grandmother within 3 days of each other in 2020, and then I lost basically my whole family from COVID a couple months after that in 2020. And so I have my dad's sister left. That's about it. Besides an uncle that I don't really talk to too much. But during Christmas, we had almost like a 4-course type meal. And I didn't go, I wasn't feeling good. And my aunt and everyone went over to my cousin's house. And for a main course, they had prime rib, a huge slab of prime rib. So it was my grandmother's favorite. It was my father's favorite. So I always feel my father around me. And during this session, I felt my grandmother coming through as well. So I said, Dad and Grandma, if you're here, or if you were here with us, or you're here with us during these holidays, what was the main course meal that we had? during Christmas today, or what that Anna and everyone have over Brittany's. And seconds later, you hear prime rib, clear as day, come out. No other words come out of the spirit box. And it just threw me, because what is the odds of prime rib coming out through a scanning, you know, spirit box, like a radio, hacked radio type style with white noise built in and stuff like that. I mean, with no words coming out beforehand, and all of a sudden just prime rib. And you can hear it on there when you listen to it. It sounds more electronic than it does like an actual, what a snippet of audio would sound like coming out of the box, meaning that it sounds manipulated by them, you know. And that's how you could tell with these spirit devices that something's tapping into the frequencies, and using that frequency with whatever energy to speak with. So it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, man, I'd love to come on. I'd love to have more experiences, and I mean, love to talk about more experiences. I mean, and yeah, totally messed it up. But yeah, you could check out some of the videos that I've had over at Coventry Circle Paranormal on YouTube. And we got to get you on our podcast, man. Our podcast is Talking with the Source. And we got to get you also on Parapost Network, man. Parapost Network, the home of paranormal podcasts. We'd love to have you stream there. So, you know, I work close with Parapost, so we definitely have to talk about that. But yeah, man, I'd love to come on again. It's been an honor to talk with you, Jaron. And I'm super happy you invited me on. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And yeah, if you can get me on network, I ain't gonna say no.
Hey, man.
Because I tried out to be on another network called WT Freak Live.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, let's just say it didn't go as planned, and that the woman hosted is not exactly all there. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I've had a couple. I've had a couple people who I've talked to that I was going to get on this show too, and it's just like, in this field, you meet some that are just out there, and it's just,
oh, absolutely. Especially in the paranormal, we're all weird.
We're all weird. But I've straight up I had someone ask me last night if I'm a reptilian, and I'm like, if I am, I don't know about it.
I was like, I wish, like, imagine all the cool things you'd be able to do. Like, you know,
be able to be in the Freemasons. But yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
a whole other topic.
But yeah, we are at the about 2.5 hour mark. So if I want to keep my listeners listening, I gotta put an end to this episode, unfortunately. But it will be continued at some point, listeners. So
absolutely.
AJ, why don't you tell listeners where they can find your Coventry Circle and you, and find everything about you guys?
Absolutely. Coventry Circle Paranormal. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can go to the YouTube page of Coventry Circle Paranormal. Check out all the spirit communication content. We also have Investigation in Montana, Old Montana State Prison, which there's one part that still will be released. Also, you can check out our podcast, International Podcast, where we bring on paranormal investigators, well-known and unwell-known. We've had Patty Negri. We're going to be having Dave Schrader. We've had actor and stuntman Rick McCallum. We've had a ton of famous people that are coming on and that are coming on. We work close with Paraflix. And like I said before, we do stream on Parapost on Facebook. It's Parapost Network Central. It has live investigation, tarot card readings, the paranormal podcast. We're going to be getting this podcast on there for sure. And one last thing I want to shout out to any paranormal investigator listening. globalghosthunt.com is about to start up. 2023 is official. We have an entire committee and staff working behind it. So it's going to be a 10-day event in October every single year, starting next year. Registration for this year will be limited. So definitely stay tuned. Go to Facebook, Twitter at Global Ghost Hunt. And it's going to be a 10-day event streaming on multiple platforms. It's going to be multimedia provided, thumbnail, video, full tech support, full everything for everyone to register. So come check it out. Come talk to us over on the page. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you.
It's funny because Christina actually mentioned the same thing last week.
Oh, awesome.
Because East Coast Paranormal is doing it this year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, there's another one called World, I think World Ghost Hunt or something like that. But Global Ghost Hunt just actually, we just finally officially made it, definite for June 1st. So it just passed last. So I'm hoping Christina comes because East Coast, like I said, great team. So
yeah, yeah, they don't. Yeah, Christina was a great guest. Not as many experiences as I would have liked, but I can't expect everybody to have your level of experiences because that's just unheard of. I mean, as someone who only had one experience with the spirit world in 34 years of his life, I can't judge because I'm not sensitive in any way towards that stuff, and I wish I was, but I'm just not. Those who want to see don't see.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And like I said before, those synchronicities, those similarities, those very small, subtle signs that people will get, whether it's a dime, a penny, a feather, or whatever, there's meanings behind everything. Even seeing synchronized numbers like 111 or 1111 or
Oh,
whatever, you know,
you
tons of things.
need to listen to the episode I did with Glenn Ralph from the Glenn Ralph podcast because you
I will
just
definitely. Oh,
you just named two things that happened to him.
oh, see, I mean, it happens to a lot of people in the paranormal. I mean, I tell you what, like I said, like I'm not lucky because I've had all these experiences. I just kind of think that it was in my fate or whatever you want to call it. But it's
I
been a while, and I look forward to sharing more with you.
I truly believe that it's just destiny or fate or whatever you want to call it. But all right, fuck COVID. Um, as as all my listeners know, you could find Paranormal the New Normal Facebook group on Facebook. I am on Twitter as @Juggalo Bastard or Jeremy Bryant. You can find it either way, I'm sure. I'm also Juggalo Bastard on Instagram and now on TikTok. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that one, but it's also called the TikTok is also called Paranormal the New Normal. So it's I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna use that for, but in order to see Christina's videos, I had to go on TikTok. So that just happened. She finally got me on it. But
Awesome, awesome.
but and you could also find me on my other podcast, Bracket Bastards, and my new podcast with fellow bastard Chancey Grive, Maniacal Music Musings. I always have to think how to say that before I say it because maniacal is one of those words where I feel like I'm going to say maniacal. But, but we just dropped our first episode last Friday. Well,
Awesome.
it'll be the second episode drops before this one, but every Friday, just like a new CDs, we release every Friday. So, and as you know, Paranormal New Normal drops every Saturday and coming soon, possibly on Wednesdays as well. But I got to line up a lot more guests before I do that one. But,
Awesome.
but AJ, I thank you for coming on. This has been a fun 2.5 hours, and I would go for another 2.5 if I didn't have a wife who would kill me if I did. So,
Thank you so much for having me on again, man.
yep, definitely thank you, and we will be having you on in the future, possibly
Cool.
in the fall. I think because I think you and Christopher Susi will be my good guests for around Halloween.
You got it, my friend. You got it.
All right, and listeners, we will see you next week.